Wired. The Solomon Brothers Series, Book 1. Written by Leslie North. Narrated by Rebecca Roberts. Chapter 1. Wired was a check in the W column when sportscasters predicted a season-ending loss. Wired was watching tapes from the 70s and spotting a new trick route. Wired was backstage passes and tables at restaurants with a 6-month wait and pedal to the floor in a Lamborghini Veneno just because your name decorated an NFL jersey. Wired was not wired. And Marcus Kingston, quarterback for the Portland Rogues, refused to be wired one damned minute more. While his teammates celebrated a win and shed mud-soaked uniforms into the locker room's equipment hampers, Marcus stayed in full dress. Helmet, pads, compression shirt, none of it his original gear. Christ, even his mouth guard was different. Probably had some kind of digital saliva strips to detect foreign DNA should he decide to take a half a dozen women up on their offers of a discreet hookup. He charged past equipment rooms, media rooms, and workout rooms down a long carpeted hallway until he reached a glass-walled conference room at the epicenter of the staff facilities. Behind the partition's gold-frosted rogue mascot, his audience had already assembled for their congratulatory executive ass slaps. Coaches, team owner and his trophy wife, general manager, shareholders, board members, all gathered to pretend they had more skin in the game than money. Marcus shoved his way inside. Clusters of conversations gradually died as the room's occupants shifted their attention to him. Aware that he carried the stench of 60 minutes of rainy gameplay, and more than his share of the stadium's natural turf embedded in his face mask and cleats, he spit out his mouthguard and dumped his equipment onto the polished oak table, one item at a time. Helmet. Last 3 minutes of the game, constant buzzing in my ear. Shoulder pads, not bothering to extract them from his jersey. First quarter, blinding orange warning light in my helmet to let me know I'm sweating in my torso region. Marcus waited for the ridiculousness of that little nugget to settle in. But the Botox-paralyzed faces simply looked upon him as if he had committed the egregious act of pairing a Cabernet with fish. Of course I'm sweating. It's fucking football. At the curse bomb, the owner awakened from his privileged coma. Marcus, we all want to congratulate you, but this is hardly the... Marcus's cleats hit the table, effectively cutting off that response. The stench was strong enough to curl Coach Banazuski's wife's $10,000 hair extensions. A few of the ladies present pressed delicate fingers beneath their nostrils. At halftime, I'm handed a printout from someone on the equipment staff that says I'm placing 63% more pressure on my arch supports than normal, which results in a 22% slowdown of my overall running speed. And could I please try to run normally? Marcus reached for the lace-ups on his pants. A swell of protest sounded in the room. His gaze leveled on the one person in the room most responsible for stripping the game of its sanctity. Claire something. Caltech hotshot. Secret weapon of professional athletes. Newest team darling, according to his defensive lineman, who had nicknamed her Claire Bear. Marcus wanted nothing more than to drop trow, see that muted O of her lips stretch long enough to bark off a kill call in a stadium of 80,000. But he stalled. He blamed her bizarre game day attire, combat boots, frothy poet shirt, goth eyeliner, and a kilt that came close to Raiders colors, for all he could detect of the color spectrum. She was cosplay in a room full of Republicans, and it was distracting as hell. Marcus settled for adjusting himself, since he was in the neighborhood anyway, and amped up the point he had wanted to make with his filthy white pants atop the gear pile. And in the third quarter, mid-play, mind you, the pads at my thighs detect a leg cramp and swell, like a goddamn life vest on a plane crashing into the ocean, which is the perfect metaphor for how that play ended, by the way. Coach Bana ran interference on him. Despite his advanced age, the 6'2" Sean Banoweski, former middle linebacker for the Patriots, mixed it up better than half the men on the squad. Bana pressed Marcus toward the door. "All right, King. Save it for the coaches' meeting in the morning. You and I both know the decision to use this tech happens around this table, not at the coaches' meeting." Marcus spotted a cluster of spreadsheets unfolded like a buffet in front of Claire. His less-than-stellar performance reduced to numerals. He juked his coach, gripped the pages, and crushed them high into the air. Caltech girl blinked back her surprise. "This isn't how you make great players and championships," said Marcus. "This is how you kill them." "Not the time or place, King." Bana's tone was all spiked cleats laced tight. "Locker room, now." "He wants to talk now, Sean. Let's talk now." The owner set down his whiskey glass and made a show of settling into the leather seat at the table's head. In case anyone present had a mind to forget, Ogden J. Sterling III of the Sterling dynasty, whose real estate fortune had allowed them to steal a franchise away from the third largest football market in the United States. "Seems I'm hearing a lot of excuses for piss-poor play out there, son." Marcus's gut hardened at the patronizing endearment, meant to soften the blow of what he suspected everyone in the room was thinking, that his best football days were behind him, that his injuries weren't worth his contract or his space on the roster, and that his future with the Rogues hinged on how much he kissed Sterling's ass. One sideways glance at Bana confirmed it. His coach's glare said, "Tread lightly, or Sterling will find someone who will." Marcus dialed himself back. "I'm not 100% yet, but I will be. My shoulder's stronger every day, and I've never had a better group of guys out there protecting me. I can get us there, I know I can. But you gotta let me do what I do best. And I can't do that when I'm wired." His gaze drifted to the woman across the room. Her eyes, rimmed with nearly as much dark smudge as the eye black swiped on his cheeks to cut the stadium glare, challenged him. Not in a lineman out for the quarterback kind of way, but softer, more open to interpretation. He couldn't imagine how smart someone had to be to pull off this level of tech. But football was a game of instinct, and she was in his house. "Numbers aren't the way to greatness," he added, more to her than anyone. His voice came out gentler than he intended. Losing his edge wouldn't help him make his point. "Numbers may not be the way to greatness," said Sterling. "But thanks to the unrelenting media cycle, every league team has the insurance companies breathing fire up their backsides to reduce liability. Rogues are no exception. We show them hard evidence we're attempting to mitigate injuries, especially concussions, and we save that chunk of change for the draft." Sterling's words spread through Marcus's body like a toxin, poisoning receptors and memories of the game he loved, the game that had saved him, twisting his path into nothing more than a string of decisions designed to chase money. "So this is a financial decision? Screw the players? Pretty soon we'll all be playing grab-ass touch football and yanking flags." "King," Bana warned. "No, Coach. No. Last year, I put up the best numbers of any quarterback in the league. Every day, every snap, I lay my health, my life, my future on the line out there for everyone in this room. I've earned the right to speak my piece. For all those guys out there." Marcus pointed toward the locker room. "Those guys out there are on board, Marcus," said Bana. "Colin has been on the tech since you went on injured reserve. Eggert hasn't earned starting quarterback. He doesn't put the team first. And you do." Sterling pulled a swig of his on-the-rocks 80-proof whiskey past his lips without a flinch. He swirled his glass again, shuffling ice cubes in the same haphazard way he shuffled free agency players. "You give slick speeches, Marcus. But are you really putting the team first? Seems to me a man unwilling to admit he's losing his edge might be in it for himself first." Marcus felt the wind knocked out of him. Third down blitz, 340-pound lineman. Silence took hold like the pin-drop hush of a stadium after a player goes down and doesn't get up. He glanced down the line of those assembled. Only Claire had the courage to make eye contact. He breathed through the blow, his defenses mounting a counterattack. The minute you pull your heads out of your wallets, or calculators, or whatever the hell is dictating this decision, you'll realize the only way to that Super Bowl ring this year is with me leading this team. No Eggert, no wires. No Caltech geniuses that know zip about the game. Me. Sterling stood, leaving his drink to sweat into oak. He pocketed his manicured hands and approached Marcus. A wash of cedar and spice and money eclipsed Marcus's stench. This is non-negotiable, Marcus. Work with Miss Winifred on the tech, or Colin starts next week. The full weight of the day's game pressed in on him. 2 sacks, 2 blows to a still-healing rotator cuff. His shell felt like a punching bag. Nothing compared to its insides. Marcus glanced at Banna, who nodded toward the locker room. Banna had his back. Marcus knew that. He also knew that a little respect went a long way. Someone special taught him that once. I'm passionate, sir. Sterling smiled, a hollow expression that didn't quite reach his eyes. I know, son. That passion is what drives this team. Think of this as quantifying that passion. You'll come to see things my way. Right. Marcus didn't nod. He didn't swallow or glance away or do anything to otherwise indicate compliance. He grabbed his gear and exited the room as he had entered, in command of his play, in command of his emotions. It wasn't until he reached the darkened hallway near the abandoned weight room that he heaved every single bit of his gear against the cinder block wall. Marcus Kingston, so poised on the field, so calm during media interviews, left the conference room and promptly lost his shit. In the darkened hallway, Claire felt like an intruder in the private depths of someone's psyche. She had followed him to bridge the gap, to explain that they were on the same side of this technology, that the software would do amazing things if he would allow it, and together they could make it perfect. But she stalled in this isolated space, unable to pull her eyes away from the mesmerizing display of testosterone and raw physical release. Claire froze, unsure of her next move. He paced the hallway, intermittently bracing and pushing against the walls like an old-school Pong game. His chest rose and fell in exaggerated exhales, the only noise to fill the space, until Claire's ringtone bleated from her pocket. Crap. Marcus snapped his attention her direction. His expression fell into shadow, but she watched him enough on the 2-story-tall media screen after a bad play to know that his mouth pinched in sharp angles and his eyes frosted over when plays backfired. She pressed the mute button on her cell, plunging them once again into quiet. I didn't mean to intrude. Am I going to get a readout on that tomorrow? Blood pressure spike? Had you been wired, you might have broken the algorithm. Her joke stalled faster than her ability to relate to someone who didn't reside in the cerebral. Square one. Start at square one. We haven't been introduced. I'm Claire. Winifred. Nothing wrong with my hearing. Nothing wrong with much else, either. Stripped of pads, his muscles were curved, stacked, taut. She didn't appreciate much about the game. Didn't understand the intelligence coma American audiences entered each Sunday, gathered around their televisions, investing their emotions in the allegiance that mattered little in the bigger picture of life. But no one could deny that an elite athlete in second skin pants spoke to the baser pleasures of the hypothalamus. Marcus Kingston was no exception. Mixed race, hair shaved close, eyes a watery blue. Everything white on him brilliant against the warm tone of his skin. Not that she would be on the receiving end of that smile. Ever, she guessed. You should get some fluids. Dehydration can have a profound impact on cognition and anxiety levels. He shook his head and gave a caustic laugh.
What else do you know about me?
She didn't have her results in front of her, but she had earned a doctorate in record time thanks to an eidetic memory. Everything she needed was always in her brain. I know you audibled 11 times, 8 of which resulted in a loss of 5 yards or more. I know the optimum angle of your throwing arm averages 42 degrees based on distance and accuracy results. Your default scan of the field is close right, far left, then far right, leaving a blind spot close left. And you grind your back molars when you're assessing the opposing team's lineup on defense.
Mouth guard.
Jumbotron. Marcus nodded, as if allowing the impressive array of statistics to sink in. He scooped up his pads and cleats and helmet.
And my hometown. The neighborhood where I grew up.
The question threw her. Not once had she come across that information. I don't know.
How about the age when I got my first beating? Or how much government assistance my dad believed he missed out on from my mother before he turned me out on the streets? Or the age I finally learned to read?
Claire's chest burned in a slow ache. Suddenly, her stats didn't seem so impressive.
See? Not everything I leave out on that field can be measured in heart rates or blood pressure or the goddamn oxygen level in my blood. You cannot quantify drive. You cannot know that I change plays at the line of scrimmage so that Rungner, who has blindness in his left peripheral vision, doesn't get creamed, or so that Garrick might be considered for the Pro Bowl this year because his father has never once said he was proud of him. Nothing you do will ever inform the choices I make out on that field.
Maybe not. But you're standing in my way as much as I'm standing in yours. We work toward the same goal. We both get what we want.
And what is it you want, Miss Winifred? A fat bank account? A title at some Ivy League school? People to notice you for something other than your ugly green skirt?
Had she been wired, body temperature tracked at her forehead would have spiked, her palms would have registered perspiration, and sensors might have picked up an increased activity in her occipital lobe, where she imagined herself giving the walking ego of the Portland Rogues a swift kick between the goalposts. Also, her skirt was red. You're right about one thing. I know zip, less than zip, about this game. But you, King, you know even less about people. Claire reversed course down the long hallway, mindful that he watched every nuance of her retreat. Training facility tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp.
Tomorrow's my day off.
Take Monday off, and you can count on a day off Sunday, too. 5 steps, 6, 7. Damn, she didn't remember the hallway being this long.
Nice to meet you, Claire Bear.
Without breaking stride, Claire fired back. Call me that again, and the other insignificant data I lifted from the sensors in your pants become common knowledge. Claire rounded the corner to the elevator, broke into a smile, and high-fived the troll-like rogue mascot painted on the wall. Chapter 2.
Seriously?
Marcus raised his hands in surrender and backed away.
I can't. Not with this level of betrayal.
Every other light in the rafters beneath the practice dome was lit, casting a sleepy glow on an already dark Monday morning. Rain hammered the synthetic fiberglass roof and sounded like distant cheers of the masses, a sensory tool Marcus had used from time to time to psych himself up during grueling practices. There was more than enough light, however, to make out the words Seahawks under the NFL logo at the V-neck of the jersey Claire wore. "What?" she asked, her eyes wide and playfully defensive, as if she were completely ignorant of her crime.
"What?"
He mimicked her protest to near-perfect pitch.
"Your wires would know what. I have a biochemical, psychological, whole-body response to that jersey."
"There's nothing wrong with this jersey."
"That jersey, here, is a sacrilege."
It's NFL.
No. No, no, no. I'm gonna get you something far more appropriate.
At this obscene hour, the equipment trailer would be locked. He snagged his practice duffel and pulled out one of his clean Rogue t-shirts he stashed for media interviews, then returned to her multi-computer setup that looked more like the NASA command center. He wondered how early she had to get here to set up all the equipment. I like my jersey. Her protest had all the bite of soggy breakfast cereal. Gone were the dark smudges around her eyes. Her face was scrubbed nearly nude, but for the napalm of some dark color at her lips. But her hair more than brought game. Parted into impressive grid lines, each shiny dark section twisted onto itself and pinned close to her scalp, but for the tiny tuft of hair at each center. Mesmerizing and distracting all at once.
You think Seahawks are a better team?
No.
Then why you wear it? The color? Something?
It belonged to my brother. She busied herself, pulling sticky backs off tiny wireless electrodes and affixing them to the spread fingers of her left hand. When she ran out of real estate on her fingers, she clustered them on the inside of her wrist.
He a Seahawks fan?
Was.
Was. Meaning not anymore. He upset they lost the Super Bowl last year.
Claire's precision focus stalled, then continued at a faster clip. Clay was killed in Afghanistan. His third and last deployment. Her words anchored Marcus like cast-iron shoulder pads. Rain swelled above them, around them, between them. A graying of what had started off more promising than the animosity of the previous day. He balled the cotton t-shirt with his fist, wishing he could repurpose it into a gag that might work in reverse, taking back the words he'd already spoken.
I'm sorry. Sometimes my mouth runs away from me.
His apology thawed the air more than his teasing. Her lips tugged into a reluctant smile, stripped of joy but dense with effort. He had come today intending to make her life difficult, but life, it seemed, had already handed her its fair share of difficult. It's the only thing, football, I own. My attempt to show you I'm a team player.
Wrong team, but
He shrugged.
Keep it on. Looks good.
Truthfully, it did. Despite being 3 sizes too large, there was something infinitely sexy about a woman who wore a football jersey like a dress. With her form-fitting half leggings and her shoestring Jesus sandals hugging the slender curves of her legs, she might be some bohemian dude's perfect cup of ganja-infused tea. She was a walking curiosity shop. Every time Marcus glanced at her, a new detail somewhere on Claire Winifred snagged his attention. We're foregoing the helmet today. Feedback there seemed to cause you the most trouble, so the plan is to get you used to the sensors from the neck down first. Take off your shirt. He wanted to say, you first, but thought better of it. Turns out, he did have command over his mouth. Sometimes. Marcus shrugged out of his shirt, wishing it was as easy to shrug out of the self-consciousness settling around his bones at her close scrutiny of his torso. He assumed a rigid posture that flexed his upper body into the best possible form, and counted the number of times Claire hesitated before pressing her first sensor against the warm skin of his left pectoral muscle, directly above his heart. No fewer than 3 hesitations. Marcus suppressed a grin. She moved around his torso and right shoulder, gently placing gummy, pea-sized discs against his skin. As she transitioned into a lengthy explanation of biofeedback theories and processors and modules of little interest to him, no doubt a self-soothing method to counteract her uneven exhales buffeting his skin, he focused on the tiny, silver, long-stemmed fruit dangling from her earlobes. 1 cherry, 1 pear. When she inched down his bicep, he stopped her.
Nothing on my throwing arm or hand.
Data from those areas are critical to your passing performance.
Such as?
Perspiration levels impacting grip, and friction on the ball at release.
I'll lick my fingertips for that.
He expected a scientific diatribe about parts per million germs on a game ball. She simply leveled a stare his direction and said, "Gross."
But effective.
Our first goal is to optimize the range of motion in your injured shoulder. Without a baseline, that is, before your injury last season, it's difficult, but not impossible. I've entered the data from Colin's session last week, for lack of a better starting point. As someone who plays the same position, his conditioning should give us a comparable range. On her screen, she pulled up a heavily pixelated but remarkable computer model, presumably Eggert, by the mane of dreadlocks that were his crowning glory. Marcus drew closer to the image as he watched the digital human take snaps and work through lateral and forward passes in 4 zones at increasing 5-yard intervals downfield. His fascination with sensors translating into real-time animation on the screen warred with the idea that any information related to him would originate as Eggert's data. Veins in Marcus's neck pulsed.
We're totally different players. He scrambles, rushes to decisions, rarely sinks back into the pocket to let his offensive line do its job.
Does he throw the football?
Yeah.
Then for our purposes it works. Marcus scowled.
Why start with the snap?
It gives us the truest origination of the shoulder's angle before throwing.
Who's going to snap the ball? You?
As tempting as it is to squat and pass pigskin between my thighs, I brought reinforcements. Claire pressed her first 2 fingers to her lips and fired off an air raid caliber whistle. Immediately, Marcus sensed movement in his peripheral vision. He turned to see his money wide receiver Keene and his never-fail center Bastera jogging toward them from the closest end zone. Claire could not have picked 2 more ideal guys to make him look his best, but clearly, the favor extended all the way back to the weeks when his injury kept him in rehab. Bastera greeted Claire with a hug, and Keene's endearment of baby doll had Marcus wondering if he was the only teammate who had yet to board the Claire fan bus. She put them through a series of orderly paces, simple snap-throw combinations to designated zones within each of the 5-yard markers. By the time Marcus had warmed up to repetitive 20-plus-yard passes, his shoulder protested. At the 40-yard bombs, his accuracy tanked, and his joint berated him like a scorned lover. When they had completed Claire's tasks, he jogged over to her electronic fortress, while Keene took a call and Bastera disappeared to chase down something he left at the last practice. Marcus sidled up beside her at her makeshift desk. She wanted him. She was going to get him. All of him. That included the sweat and foul breath that accompanied physical exertion. With any luck, she'd call it a day, based on the saturation of his shirt alone. A trio of monitors set in close proximity riveted her attention. The first displayed a legless image of him cycling through each throw. The middle screen reduced his movements to real-time lines on a bar graph, continuously drawing and reshaping based upon the throw. The third screen flashed a conglomerate of biostats at 1-second intervals that culminated in a final snapshot of average vitals for each throw. None of the screens coughed up the truth. His shoulder hurt like a motherfucker. No way he was revealing that. No way. He would be out on that field Sunday if he had to sink razor blades into the pads of his feet to offset the pain. So, if you look at the corresponding red line for each throw, you'll see that the repetitions that hit closest to your maximum range of movement achieve the most inconsistent results. Understandable, given your injury. But take a look at the green spikes. These indicate the maximum velocity during the course of each rotation. Cross-reference the red and green against the completion graph, and we can deduce that the faster you achieve your maximum rotation, the more effective the throw, at less of a range. He didn't understand a word she said past red and green, which he vaguely knew in isolation, but turned into a mess in proximity to the other colors in the spectrum. But goddamned if her features didn't light up with all this data and spark something deep inside him where his passion for the game resided.
Translation? Faster, not harder. The spark ignited and sent a current straight to his groin. Damned if he didn't feel motion. He dismissed it as the endorphin cocktail of a spent body. He probably would have mugged Edna, head groundskeeper of the stadium with an unfortunate can-opener front tooth, had she paraded in front of him right now with those words. His skin crawled at the thought. Maybe not. But there was no way he was sexing up the enemy. He'd do well to remember that. Even her name, Claire Winifred, could make a guy sterile. Marcus scooped up his shirt, his mind already 10 minutes past this absurd drama. He tried to pick off the first of probably 30 electrodes, but some brainiac had engineered the glue to withstand a waterfall of sweat. He'd get him later. He strode toward the locker room. Faster, not harder. I'll keep that in mind on Sunday, he called over his shoulder. She stood. Where are you going? Her voice held all the surprise it shouldn't have. Clearly, Care Bear wasn't as good at reading people as she claimed. Every second he was out here, he felt like a puppet of her tech. He stopped and turned. To shower. Then a soft bed with a soft woman of my choice. We're not finished. Clearly, you know nothing about my injury if you think I'm going to use my arm today for anything more than holding up a cold beer. You've pushed it through enough passes for 3 games. We still need waist down data. Your game stats yesterday indicated unnecessary steps. Raising your awareness about wider strides will conserve your energy and shave crucial seconds off the running game. Conserve your energy. Jesus, he'd had enough. He made a 10-yard play to leave. I'm out of here. We could try your helmet. The azimuth of your eye scan downfield is anomalous. You don't get it, do you? There is no we. I won't be thinking about wider strides or faster and harder throws on the line of scrimmage. Football is a game of instincts. Plays unfold in milliseconds, and I react. There isn't a computer in the world that can quantify human decision in that moment. The only thing your numbers do is get in the way of instincts that took me a decade to develop. So you can take your red and green lines and azimuths, whatever the fuck those were, to Sterling and tell him I showed and did my part. Damned if her eyes didn't widen to the most vulnerable orbs. Even at this distance, 20 yards, he knew their color. Whatever color would be spectacular. Not the grayscale of the field, but not far off. Not for the first time in his life, he believed his colorblindness made him miss something worthwhile. This time, however, the fleeting stab of loss in his gut lasted longer, carved deeper. I can help you, Marcus. I can make sure you're on that field Sunday. Tripping on the power? You say the word and I'm in? It's not like that. Then you tell me what it's like. Because from where I stand, you're the problem. I can help you because I have years of sweat and neglected relationships and everything I ever wanted, really wanted, contingent upon your success on that field Sunday. You win, I win. Marcus shook his head. He didn't want to know her, to know anything about her years and neglected relationships. He wanted her to fail, so she would no longer impose her number-crunching scientific theories on his performance, a performance that caused him sleepless nights. I know you're scared your career is over. She made a play. Closer. Closer. Her voice softened. I can help you. His throat squeezed tight. His heart pumped, as if he'd sprinted downfield and forgotten his numb, unfeeling, unmoving legs in the process. She knew zip. Less than zip. You'll never be part of my win, Claire. Marcus reached for the first sensor she placed on him, the one above his heart. He ripped it from his skin and made a show of dropping it on the field, the final punctuation to his firmest belief. His declaration should have nestled beneath his flesh, warm and righteous and satisfying. It didn't. He jogged off the field, feeling like a first-rate asshole.
Chapter 3. Claire bribed Keene to find Marcus. She promised Keene she wouldn't head down to the Hazelwood district, Portland's highest crime neighborhood. But an hour later, she handed the cab driver an extra wad of cash to wait for her. She just needed a minute. She hadn't exactly formulated a plan to get Marcus to return for another session tomorrow. Applying her research to high-functioning players like Keene and Bastera wasn't going to get her the data she needed to secure her biggest goal, the United States military. She needed an impressive before and after, someone with high-profile results, someone with enough of an impact on the game to affect a team's outcome. If she delivered, Sterling guaranteed he would use his money and connections to help her secure an audience at the Pentagon. That was where her tech could make a real difference. Her tech on every uniform that deployed. Lives saved. Not some stupid ball game. The building that matched the address Keene had given her was an old 2-story firehouse. The first-floor windows had been bricked in, but the top floor was dotted every 10 feet with large circular windows and capstones that looked like eyelashes winking against the waning day. The craftsmanship was extraordinary for its era, no doubt pre-World War II. The bright pink graffiti that ran the length of the salt box structure, words too stylized to even read, made her a little nauseous. Clay died so that inner city punks could deface beauty. What was Marcus doing here? All day, the sky had sputtered a combination of wind and droplets that threatened to drive her back inside. Gray days were a novelty that hadn't yet worn out their welcome on her sunny California mentality. Given time, an entire season, she might be tempted to spray paint her distress, too. Claire glanced back to make sure the cab still clung to the curb. Satisfied the driver had kept his word to wait, she tried the double metal doors facing the street. Locked. Indistinct sounds seeped through the door cracks. Music, maybe. Every now and then a male voice rose above the din. She knocked twice. No one came. On the building's east side, she spotted a metal staircase to a second-floor door. She scaled the damp steps and found the door unlocked. Inside, a potent combination of musty sweat and hardcore rap ambushed her senses. She welcomed the onslaught. In from the chill and a covert bird's nest view of a gym, complete with an expensive-looking fight cage in the center. Surrounding the octagon, pockets of equipment crowded the space. Color-coordinated weight machines and free weights, punching bags, fitness machines. Nailed to the far wall, the one defaced by graffiti outside, was the most intricate climbing wall Claire had ever seen, complete with ropes and harnesses and a skywalk of pathways that crisscrossed below her. Everywhere, teenage boys in matching yellow logo shirts trained. For what, she couldn't say. Life beyond this little oasis, for starters. Claire should have descended the stairs, announced her presence. Instead, she lowered herself to the steps and watched a shirtless Marcus work with a young man in the center cage. She couldn't make out their words, but Marcus broke down moves into slow motion and contoured the boy's stance and position to ensure optimum contact. Every few minutes, the boy's expression would morph from concentration to a megawatt smile that dissolved into laughter. And Claire's smile would stretch a little more. Marcus had ignored her calls all day, and she still hadn't decided if she should tell him the real reason Sterling hired her. For some, the truth would be motivating. For others, crippling. She didn't know Marcus well enough to know on which side of the truth divide he fell. Sterling already had his eye on Eggert. Believing Marcus's best days were behind him, Sterling wanted to download the genius that Marcus came by naturally into the team's new protege. Claire didn't really care who led the rogues to victory, so long as her tech proved sound. At least that's what she told herself. "Ain't nobody allowed to sit there, gym rules." Claire glanced toward the voice. It came from a kid about 14 suspended from a harness. He scuttled atop a girder and perched, giving her the once-over with a critical eye. "You lost?" "No, I'm here to see Marcus." "Not many people he know come here. You must be special if he told you that." Her body felt leaden, like she had betrayed Marcus somehow. "What is this place?" "Ain't got a name. Kids call it the Hive on account of the black and yellow on the equipment. Invite only." "Now who's the special one?" she teased. At the compliment, the boy shook and bowed his head. A blush crept across his tawny skin. "How often is he here?" "All the time, owns the place." Claire glanced down into the cage. Sweat glazed Marcus's bronzed shoulders. His movements were deliberate, practiced, as if he'd been groomed more for fighting than tossing pigskin. His physique was nothing too big or sinuous, just damn near mouth-watering with the small sprays of curly black hair at the center of his chest. She had seen dozens of athletic builds since this assignment began, had seen Marcus's body that very day, but somehow knowing that he spent his free day here in an anonymous building with inner-city youth, with no indication of his ego injected anywhere into the space, made her pay closer attention. Never before had she been attracted to physicality. Brains, yes, absolutely. Altruism? Never before, but she supposed there was a first time for everything. Maybe it was simply the collision of expectations and reality. The most famous quarterback in the league could easily have been an arrogant tool. The boy continued to stare. She wondered if he tracked everyone who came in the door. "I'm Claire." "Darius." "I know we just met, Darius, but do you think we can keep me stopping by a secret?" Darius shrugged. "He's busy. I don't want to intrude." Darius stared. The atmosphere in the gym had gone from stale to awkward faster than she could have taken the stairs to the exit, 2 at a time. Good to talk, Darius." She felt she should add something else since the boy made no movements to continue his agile process on the course. Stay special." "You too, Claire." She smiled. Somehow, eliciting words where there had been none eased the discomfort in her stomach. As a reminder, she mimed buttoning her lip. He gave her a chin tilt in acknowledgement. Claire climbed the stairs to the top 2 at a time. Against her better judgment, she glanced back at the extraordinary garden of refuge Marcus had planted in an area void of seeds and light and hope. Impressive didn't begin to describe what he had done here. She wanted one more look, but instead, her gaze fell 2 stories below to the man at the center ring, his face lifted, his body squared to hers, his stare as concrete as the pavement beyond. She exited the building, relieved to see the taxi still parked on the street. The rain was cold enough to threaten snow, if her skin-deep chill was any indication. She gave the driver an address far from Hazelwood, while her mind was far from confident Marcus would show up to their session the next afternoon. Far from the place she thought she'd be, not caring what Marcus Kingston thought of her. Truth be told, he had the body and the allure to drive her to distraction. She curled up against the back seat, her thoughts crippled by the driving rain, and a man she could never begin to understand. "You're colorblind." A statement, not a question. Marcus's abdomen wrung like a used towel. Not hello, not sorry for conning Keen so I could follow you, not even put on this sensor and run a lap. Claire Winifred was all business for this session. She wore gauzy pants 3 sizes too big that tapered to a trim and absurdly high waist, glittery Wizard of Oz shoes, and a t-shirt displaying a matrix of 0s and 1s with a ladybug caught in the middle. Her hair fell past her shoulders in soft waves, far too normal for her to pull off. He mourned the crazy delight of yesterday's punk hairstyle, but not enough to forgive her invasive opening salvo. "Hello to you, too." She glanced up from her monitor. The screen cast a bluish light against her astonishingly pale skin. He wondered if she ever sought sunlight. "I'm sorry, it's just that we're starting late. I don't do late well. I like things orderly." "I hadn't noticed." "I wasn't sure you'd come." "Neither was I. Figured if I showed up here, you wouldn't show up in Hazelwood again." "You didn't answer any of my calls." "Keen had no business sending you there." "He didn't send me. In fact, he told me not to go." "It's dangerous, Claire." "And yet you go." "Someone has to." He was done talking about the hive. The place resided deep inside him, a place he rarely granted access to. Certainly not to her. Her showing up there had been bad enough, but bringing it up, talking about it, set him on edge. He didn't want to be that close to her. To anyone, really, but the kids it served. He remembered Darius's words when Claire left. "She all that, man." He perched on a nearby stool. "Let's get this over with." Claire reloaded, her voice, her attitude back to business. "Your team know you're colorblind?" Marcus glanced behind him. The rest of the team had largely dispersed after practice. Some gathered in conversational huddles at the far end of the field. Most had gone home to their families. She could have announced he had an STD with a bullhorn, and it was doubtful anyone would have heard her. Still, he considered which was the more off-putting diagnosis. Colorblindness showed weakness. Team leaders could not afford weakness. "No." "Anyone know?" "Jake, the lead on the equipment staff. He leaves me a tag inside the correct jersey. The team doc and Coach Banna. On the play sketches, Coach makes certain..." "Modifications?" Marcus nodded. "How did you know?" "The data lines yesterday. Some of them were red or green, yet you didn't say anything. The bright colors at the gym. It must have been hard to be traded to a team whose colors were burgundy and olive green." For most aspects of Marcus's life, he didn't think about his deficiency. Hell, until he hit chemistry class in high school and got the same color titration results each time, he didn't know. His cousin couldn't see out of his left eye because of an accidental gun discharge when he was 8. Left a big fucking hole. Marcus always figured it could be worse. "Would be better if the NFL did shirts and skins." "Now that's something I would watch." Aha. So, Little Miss Code did find something appealing about football beyond data. The insight made him want to push her out of her comfort zone, take back some of the power play. "That's so." "You sound surprised." "A little. I had you pegged for the professor type. Button down and khakis. Maybe some eyeglasses. Takes you out on weekends to political sit-ins and art museums. Plays the oboe." She wrinkled her nose. He found unexpectedly adorable. "So, what is your type, Miss Winifred?" "Not sure I have one. Most of my time is spent in computer labs, surrounded by men with foot odor and coffee breath who think dressing up is breaking out a clean shirt with no holes. Hard to form a type from those desperate conditions." He smiled and settled into their banter, far more at ease when it wasn't focused on his data, his disability, or his career. No longer did he want to simply get this over with. A bubble of temptation to flirt surfaced. He pushed it down. "And now that you've ventured into the dark side of Neanderthal athletes," and he did mean dark side, he wondered if Claire's developing type would include men of color. "A type might be easier to come by." She unwrapped a package of fresh sensors and drew close, between his knees to be exact. He made no effort to move, but the casual rhythm of his breaths hit a block. She brought with her an unexpected scent, soft, flowery. Not one of those overpowering flowers like roses, but a bouquet of something he would definitely bury his nose in to chase more fragrance. He had no idea what her shirt meant, but he gained a fuller appreciation of the pattern when shrink-wrapped against breasts he knew would be slightly heavy should they ever find his palm. He swelled inside his jock, and nearly bounded to his feet. Claire was someone to be endured, not wanted. He was certain she had no idea of the compromising nature of her position until his gaze lifted to meet her eyes. He knew the precise moment she realized her peril by the slow, deliberate stall of her hand movement. She lifted the first sensor clear of the plastic and held onto it as if she had forgotten her task. Her stare edged free of his hand and found solace in inanimate objects surrounding them. Her lips fell slack. "Heart rate first." Her voice wasn't quite there for her. "Claire," he whispered. His gaze dropped to her long neck in time to glimpse a swallow along its subtle curves. He was close enough to thread his fingers through her loose waves and elevate her standard of men with a gentle kiss. Close enough to loop his arms around her waist, bury his face in her numbered shirt,
and pull her against his low, mounting ache that refused to listen to his brain. Close enough to entertain the thought of wanting to know her, really know her. And he would have staked a bet on her return game. Mm-hmm. Marcus plucked the sensor from her fingertip. Her low V-neck afforded him all the access he needed to affirm that she was affected by his proximity. He pressed the sensor above the warm, slightly exposed swell of her left breast and glanced at the monitor where he'd seen his own heart rate displayed the previous day. 160, 165, 170. As if she had sprinted a post route for a gain of 40 yards. She gave the screen a side glance. Her gaze crumbled to a spot somewhere on his shirt. "That's one way to, quantify things," he said. "Marcus." "What color are your eyes?" She drew an uneven breath. "Green." He assimilated this with what he knew to be true, that their light, glistening depths appealed to his senses far more than the field of the game he loved. Still, it wasn't enough. There was freedom in knowing his secret, a freedom he shouldn't have pushed past, but he did. "And your lips today?" She pressed her lips together, as if the action summoned a memory based upon the feel of her lipstick. All it summoned, however, was an intense desire to taste her. "Purple." "I think I like purple." He leaned forward, poised to capture her lips, but he refused to travel the remaining distance to her mouth. Long ago, he had realized the magnitude of his position. He never wanted a woman to mistake lust for obligation. He simply made his intentions clear and settled in for the wait. With Claire, the wait was a full-on timeout. Everything about her expression telegraphed that she reciprocated the kiss in her mind. Her creamy skin flushed darker. A deliberate breath raised and lowered her chest as if she could not pull the oxygen she craved. She blinked her way out of her sluggish trance, removed the sensor, and backed away. The readout spiked, then recalibrated to a series of dashes. "We should—" Her words stalled, as if her body suggested make out, while her brain slammed on the professional brakes. "Work on your helmet today." With the mention of her tech, the barrier rose up between them once again. She retreated to the safety of her screens, companions that would never push her beyond preset boundaries. Claire couldn't argue with science. The data had quantified everything. Everything but the reason she refused to kiss him. Chapter 4. The apartment Sterling put her in for the rogue season stretched the entire 5th floor of the renovated paper factory near Portland's exclusive Pearl District. Nearly 2,000 square feet more than her tiny place in the Santa Clara Valley she shared with 3 other freelance techies, eating ramen and skipping meals to survive. She hadn't known what to do with all the extra space, so she did what any self-respecting female would do in a strange city when surrounded by a constant barrage of testosterone-fueled men. She insisted her closest team member and friend Joe stay with her in Portland. "Tech support," Claire had said. "More like bleh support," said Joe. "You need me in your life, so you don't devolve into the pasty-faced grad student I found mainlining caffeine and wearing knee-high wool socks in July." "The lab was cold. Even you said so." Joe had agreed to accompany her on 2 conditions. 1, Claire was the face of her tech. Joe would be a shadow support for anything code-based that Claire needed, primarily because Claire was prone to selling herself and her tech short. And 2, Claire never left the loft without Joe approving her wardrobe. "No wool knee-highs on my watch. Never again," Joe had said. But on nights like this, Claire was glad Joe had a weakness for the 10 coffee bars within a 2-block radius and their extensive hipster clientele. Claire found the loft blissfully empty. She turned off all the lights but the artsy amber bulb lanterns over the kitchen island and settled onto the couch to watch the rain wash Portland city lights into colored streaks down the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sleep had been her goal,
but the colors made her think of Marcus. The almost kiss hadn't been entirely unwelcome, but she attributed that to his fine body and the fact that she hadn't had sex in over a year. People like Marcus didn't inhabit her world. She cared about global warming and human rights and ensuring her brother had not died in vain. Even bribed to care whether the Rogues hit the playoffs, she couldn't even muster one hoorah at the prospect. Marcus was an elite player at the pinnacle of his career. But did that career mean anything in the long run? She lumped professional athletes into the same category as actors and poker tournament players, good for entertainment value but unworthy of their lofty legacy. At least until the hive made him worthy. He was making a difference. He had leveraged his wealth for a greater purpose, which made the almost kiss all the more problematic. If she had learned anything from her first failed attempt to get wearable tech into the bodies of soldiers, it was that emotions divert people from reaching their goals. After the first kick in the teeth, in a stark white room full of generals and Washington brass, where her fail-safe demonstration devolved into total file corruption, she had holed herself up for 3 years, painstakingly combing through lines of code and making her tech more functional, less invasive, and ruthlessly foolproof. For the first time, she had rushed it. Clay hadn't even been in the ground for 6 months. She needed more time to grieve. This time, she would not allow emotions, even of the relationship variety, to corrupt this second chance Sterling had given her. Still, she sank into the plump cushions and mentally finished the almost kiss 6 ways to Super Bowl Sunday. A key turned the tumbler in the front door lock. Claire stirred, groggy. She had the sense she had fallen asleep. She had lost time. She stretched and sat up. "There you are." Jo breezed into the common area, her arms laden with shopping bags and a garment bag. "We were supposed to meet for faux?" Needles of remembrance stabbed Claire's brain. "Oh, Jo, I'm so sorry." "It's okay. I know you had your session with the King of Hotston." She switched on the kitchen lights. Claire recoiled from the bright assault. "Stop calling him that." Despite her determination to reprogram Jo's hormones into healthier diversions, she smiled. Jo had been a lifeline after Clay's death. She had given Claire permission to rail, to sob, to dress like a homeless woman. And then, she reminded her none of that was what Clay would have wanted. And because Jo knew Clay, Claire listened. "What's all that?" asked Claire. "Your dress for the ball." Claire's spine straightened. "No, absolutely not. I'm not going." "Come on, Claire. It's a military charity event. The perfect forum to talk up your tech. Nothing but military brass and the top 1%, and that means investors with deep pockets. And the entire rogue organization, which I am no part of, need I remind you?" "Hooey. If you get their star quarterback to the Super Bowl, Sterling will rename an end zone after you." Jo laid the garment bag over the back of the overstuffed chair, as if it were a Swarovski crystal gown. Claire didn't even want to know the expense of a dress that required that level of care. "Besides," Jo went on, "Keen invited you, and said he wouldn't take no for an answer." "He already has a date." "And his wife adores you. You can't show up looking like a slob next to her. The woman puts Beyoncé to shame." "Let's see it before I make you take it back." Jo unzipped the bag and pulled the dress out with a flourish. Red silk, high neck, full-length sleeves, and 0 fabric in the back. "Where's the other half?" "Funny. You show up wearing this, you can assemble your own subcommittee on Veterans Affairs." "I want them to license my tech, not parade me on the USO tour." Claire rose from the couch and gravitated toward the dress. In her hand, the fabric felt addictive and sensual, like water through her fingertips. Her first thought, "I can't afford this. Every dime goes back into the tech." Her second, third, and fourth thoughts, "Marcus can't see red." What the hell was the matter with her? Since when did Marcus Kingston become her litmus test for every waking moment? She reverted back to her first thought. Claire was nothing if not level-headed. "Joe, it's beautiful. Not me, but beautiful. I'll take it back in the morning." "Too late. I might have dropped a hint with Keen's wife when I saw her out shopping. She told me to tell you it's a gift for suggesting a sleep clinic. Turns out Keen has apnea. No 300-pound linebacker snores next to her at night anymore. She said that kind of peace of mind was worth 20 silk dresses." "Joe, we'll make it you, I promise." Joe repositioned Claire to catch her reflection in an entryway mirror, dress held in front. Only one thing would make it her. Clay's dog tags around her neck. An appropriate statement for a military gala. But each time he slipped the chain over her head, she was overcome with a sense of melancholy. Her wearing them meant he couldn't, ever again. And that, more than anything, recommitted her to keeping her emotions off the playing field. A woman on each arm, Keen strutted into the Girding Theater the next night. Dripping in gold light from bulbs strung from the high ceiling, the industrial-style 2-story event space could not have been better for a military charity event. From the raw shell of the building, Claire could still picture the armory it had been in the 1800s, in the beautifully carved wooden trusses and modern materials that enclosed a breathtaking gathering space. She believed Clay was with her. Despite the evening chill, the warm cloak of her brother's nearness settled on her shoulders. Since his passing, she often found herself in situations beyond her comfort zone. Clay used to tell her she needed to get out more, look up from her computer screens, notice life passing her by. She believed this night was him trying to make his point again, as he so often did, pulling fate's strings from beyond this world. She wouldn't disappoint. "I'm ready for my 10 minutes of bliss," said Keen, rubbing his hands in anticipation. Jada Keen rolled her eyes and hip-bumped him. "He thinks these events are about 10 minutes of untainted fun, followed by hours of complaints about how her heels torture her feet, which then gives you the perfect excuse to have them in hand later." Keen wagged his brows, kissed the back of Jada's hand as confirmation, and politely excused himself to get drinks. Claire never imagined professional athletes could be so funny, so down to earth, so absolutely attuned to the needs of others. From the moment the formal evening began, he lavished attention on his beautiful wife, talking up her law firm and her history with international regulations and corporations affected by ever-changing trade agreements. Jada aimed to enter into diplomatic relations somewhere in the Pacific Rim, but knew Keen's career had a time limit. There would be plenty of time for her dreams once his were in the record books. That someone so worldly, Ivy League educated, and sophisticated could make a relationship work with someone like Keen was a revelation to Claire. Together they were a sight to behold. Not perfect, just real. "You look spectacular, Claire. The hanger did not do that dress justice," Jada said. Claire was certain she was just being polite. She heard Jada tell someone from the local media out front, when asked, that her white silk shift was an Alexander Wang. The designer could not have found a better ambassador for his dress. She looked as if someone had poured cream at her shoulder and it settled into all the right places on her body. "You're generous, in gift and kindness. I don't know how to thank you." "Your getting your technology on those soldiers will be thanks enough. My father was a Marine, and his father before him. Our soldiers deserve the best." Jada gave her a covert tour of the room, attaching unmistakable physical characteristics or dress to the names of those who would most help Claire advance her objective. Valuable insight crowded Claire's brain, including which men often deferred to their wives on matters of social importance, and which attendees had fewer degrees of separation from the Pentagon than others. Jada ended her in-depth study of the room with another, less formal directive. "Remember to have fun. Wait for them to ask what you do first. That way, they feel like they're in control of the conversation." Sounds like expert advice. Works on Keen every time. Claire and Jada shared a laugh, promptly interrupted by the receiver himself.
Far, far too many secrets over here.
He handed them both an on-the-rocks martini, 2 olives. Claire rarely drank, but was grateful for something to fill her hand.
What works on me every time?
He pressed. Jada leaned over and placed a charming kiss on his cheek. His eyes crinkled to slits. His smile rivaled the twinkling lights.
Every time,
he said. A flurry of flashbulbs lit the entrance. The overall noise in the room swelled. Claire glanced toward the commotion and spotted Marcus dressed in a smoke-gray 3-piece suit with a silver tie. He was classic and tailored with just a bit of flash. A gorgeous blonde in a silver-beaded cocktail dress that captured the lights when she moved hung on his arm. Claire gripped Clay's dog tags. A powerful urge to remove them and slip them into her clutch, to hide the ugly metal marring her glamorous dress, overcame her. She washed it away on a robust gulp of gin and tried not to hate herself for the errant thought. Competing with Marcus's date in the looks department was a lost cause anyway, even if she wanted to. She wasn't here for any reason except to impress the potential investors how her tech could save lives on the battlefield. She politely excused herself to mingle. Some of the men and women Jada mentioned were friendly, standing in small groups, making the first attempt at introductions. Most often, the conversation centered around Clay's dog tags. The soldiers and officers, past and present, wanted specifics like where he served and when, a point of contact with a powerful brotherhood. Their dates would often comment on the loving sentiment worn with her beautiful dress. As he had in life, Clay broke the ice for Claire to shine through. For those in attendance who weren't as easily approached, Claire found a conversational bridge in Sterling. 30 minutes into the event, he introduced her around as his secret weapon and loudly professed that she would be a soldier's greatest ally since Garrett Morgan invented the gas mask in 1914. And when Sterling excused himself to take a phone call, Claire found herself alone, a state that normally gave her great relief, but not in social situations. She allowed her gaze to trail upward toward the building's architecture.
Claire?
Nerves that had been tangled in her stomach all night stretched for her fingers and toes. The voice was unmistakable. In truth, she had honed her senses to hear it since he arrived and chided herself for why she should care. Maybe she just wanted Marcus to see her as something other than an eccentric nerd. She turned to him, realized he was alone. Most of the party guests had ventured downstairs to the dance floor, where a guitar quartet picked out a painfully slow emo version of Can't Take My Eyes Off You. "Hi," she said.
I didn't know you'd be here tonight.
Keen invited me. He said there would be good contacts here.
He's right.
Marcus seemed distracted from the conversation. Not by anything outside their abandoned corner of the room, but by something between them. His gaze strayed from hers. She rested her hands at the railing and stared down into the sea of dark suits and gemstone-colored dresses as the singer crooned, "You'd be like heaven to touch." Marcus's blonde seemed to be the crown jewel, dancing with a man who had an impressive block of military honor bars at the breast of his coat. "Your date is stunning."
"She's a friend,"
he replied, though Claire hadn't asked. His earlier words, "soft woman of my choice," sprouted from her memory. Because Claire functioned best with numbers, she wondered how many there had been. The non-kiss was there between them, just as she predicted it would be. If she was to get their interaction back on professional terms, she had to be direct. "I lost my head earlier. It was totally unprofessional of me, and I apologize for putting myself in that position. I don't want our sessions to be awkward because of it."
"It?"
"You know."
"I'm afraid I don't. Refresh my memory."
His expression was irritatingly blank. Claire squirmed and glanced around. They were as alone as they had been on the practice field. Surely he didn't mean... "When you know, almost kissed me?" Half whisper, half mumble, as if the music didn't drown out all conversation that wasn't mouth to ear.
"I almost kissed you?"
So much for his blank expression. Hand covering his Windsor knot, brows pinched, he looked genuinely affronted, but for the gleam in his eyes. Claire glanced around, expecting to see Sterling or Marcus's soft woman of his choice, or worse, Keen. The teasing would be relentless. Yes. Marcus smiled and shook his head. I request a review on that call because that's definitely not how it happened. You were practically falling onto my lips. Her first thought, God, what a pillowy place to land. Her second thought, no, just no. Instant replay would show you and your smirk and your cockiness and your what color are your eyes play. None of which are a precursor to a kiss. You crossed into my personal space. Two position sensors. Her voice pitched high, defensive. Dodging bullets in an 1890s military drill, this building's original purpose, would have been preferable to defending her tech and integrity against someone determined to make her task difficult. She knew he had wanted the kiss as much as she had, but now, outside that moment, and compared to his soft woman of the evening, Claire just didn't measure up. It soothed his ego to put this on her. Still, she needed him, needed this plan to work. She squeezed her fist until her nails buried painful trenches in her palm. It won't happen again. Good night, Marcus. Claire turned for the stairs. Hold it. Chapter 5. Claire paused. The shell of her body stiffened like the spine of the building overhead. Inside, she was swinging lights, all chaotic movement at the whim of a man who had built his career on unpredictability. Tell me what you really want to say. Marcus, please. Tell me. His tone was edgy, commanding. A man used to getting his way. Her sizzling comebacks warred with the plan. She couldn't afford to let her mouth jeopardize her chance to make a difference. There was a reason Clay's life ended and hers continued. Her tech was her reason. Nothing would stand in her way. Show up tomorrow, 7 a.m., and I'll tell you. It was the best leverage she had. For now, it was enough. Claire left him on the landing, hands buried in his pockets, lapels puckered against his hard body from the stance. Her exposed back felt his stare all the way down the steps, as acutely as if he had inserted a web of needles beneath her skin. She was relieved the girding theater was architecturally complex enough to conceal the rest of her retreat, or so she thought. The moment she bid Keen and Jada goodbye to hail a cab, she glanced up. Marcus remained at the second-floor railing, his eyes tracking her. As if Claire's cryptic bait to get Marcus to her early morning session hadn't been enough, a text from her popped up on his phone at 6 a.m. Meet me in film room number 3, 7 o'clock sharp. The prospect of easing into what was sure to be a grueling team drill day with a cup of coffee in a dark tapes room instead of on the field offset the annoying wake-up chime on his phone. The prospect of seeing Claire again lit him up like his bed was on fire. His empty bed. Katya had been all over him the moment they crawled into the back of his Escalade after the charity event. Normally, he preferred to drive, but Sterling provided a fleet of drivers on nights when alcohol might impair judgment. His sweetest date took his backseat freedom as an opportunity for foreplay. He'd let her get as far as placing his hands between her thighs before he pulled back. He simply couldn't when it was no longer her, but Claire he wanted beneath his touch. He had been so freaked out by where Claire's body took him of late that he asked the driver to escort a pouting Katya to her door. How had he allowed someone like Claire Winifred so much real estate in his mind? He sank against his supple leather interior, much as he did now against his high thread count sheets, and recreated Claire in that dress. He would have given his entire signing bonus to know its real color firsthand. Not in word or description, but to drink it in through his flawed eyes and become intimate with how it pressed upon his senses. In his deficiency, he had come to believe color had texture and noise and taste. He wanted nothing more than to taste Claire's color. From the front, she had been all business, all smart and understated. Her back, however, had taken him off his game of remaining cool and unaffected. He had been right about her never stepping out into the sun, for her skin, from her shoulder blades to the slope at the small of her back, was flawless, captivating, touchable. Her descent down the stairs nearly sidelined him. But for all the glamour, the subtle way she had pinned her hair, the respectable hemline that skimmed her knees, her diamond stud earrings, lips he guessed were the same hue as her dress by their tone. He missed her eccentricities, the subtle oddities she hid behind that telegraphed the real person beneath. The only hint of the real Claire had been her brother's dog tags, a sight that had cemented his determination to cooperate. He showered and made it to the film room in record time. At first, he was alone with some equipment she had set on a back table. He settled into a center recliner, lights dim, and pulled the slightly bitter Colombian roast past his lips. He no longer needed the caffeine jolt. Anticipating Claire was enough. And that scared the hell out of him. She was here because he was a means to her end, nothing more. The season would end and she would be gone. She had said as much herself. We work toward the same goal. We both get what we want. He just wished he could feel something, anything, that wasn't tied to the game. If his past dictated his future, he would be dead without football. Claire breezed through the room's back entrance, his helmet in hand. The sight was familiar. She had handled his helmet the entire last season, outfitting wireless sensors in precisely the right places, taking him through a series of questions designed to maximize input without compromising his focus and attention. Not realizing she had managed to single-handedly do just that by being there and almost kissing him. And though the sight of her holding his gear was familiar, he never tired of it. Equipment to a football player was beyond intimate, an extension of the man, what allowed him to be his best. Her hands on his helmet no longer triggered his defenses. Somehow it felt safe. "Good, you're here." All hint of awkwardness from the previous night was gone from her voice, replaced by the fast-forward version of Claire, as if she had already taken the first 10 paces without him. She handed him a takeout box. "I brought you breakfast."
I don't eat this early on practice days.
"Nonsense. I spoke to the team nutritionist. Made to his strict orders at the breakfast cafe Keene told me was your favorite." The scent wafting through the styrofoam seams was amazing. Marcus's stomach growled.
Thank you.
He popped open the lid, unwrapped the plastic fork, and dug into the anemic-looking egg white omelet, loaded with lean protein and veggies. His taste buds awakened with pleasure. I don't know about you, but my brain malfunctions on a diet of coffee. And we're after your mental game today.
Nothing wrong with my mental game, he said around a mouthful. Injury was to my passing shoulder, remember?
Right, but your mental game is what separates you from your peers. Claire turned around a stray metal chair at the front of the room beneath the big screen and sat straddling its back. To some, a casually masculine thing to do. To Marcus, who had battled back images of her straddling him more than a few times since the previous night, a move that shortcutted his eating. He cleared a cluster of eggs lodged in his throat. She wore a button-down plaid shirt with paisley suspenders and guy jeans rolled at the cuff and cinched with a man's tie through the belt loops. A handful of sharpened No. 2 pencils skewered her hair, twisted high in the back. One wrist sported an absurd number of bracelets, the other was bare. This was Claire. He settled deeper into the cushion of his recliner, fresh off the first compliment he could remember her lobbing in his direction, and finished his breakfast. Yesterday, we focused on configuring the tools for optimal feedback. Today, we'll work on how to utilize those tools to up your game.
I'm all yours.
The words were out before he could bite them back. But she was in Claire mode. If she read an alternate meaning into his expression, she never indicated it. First, we look at the baseline. She handed him his helmet and retreated to the back of the room. Marcus slid on his helmet when the screen before him showed life. She had added components to it the previous day. He settled into the feel of her alterations. With time, the additions would feel natural. The video started. Field view, late day, Giants. G on the opposition helmet. Christ, it was last Sunday's game. Snap one, from his perspective.
What did you...
Sterling allowed me to mount a camera prior to the game. Tiny high-def panoramic. Best that money can buy. I thought you might have broken it when you slammed your helmet down in the hallway. A subtle dig at his temper. He would never apologize for his passion. Never. The NFL owns this footage, by the way, she added. It doesn't leave this room.
And sound?
No mic, so I won't know how many times you cursed me out. Marcus's mouth twitched into a smile. At least 20. As much as he had felt the intrusion of the camera and would have liked to know it was there, the clarity and scope of the video was mind-boggling, like nothing he'd ever seen. He could even make out the sweat beads on the opposing players. His eyes trained all the way through the opening offensive play, a boost to his confidence. It had been an up-tempo, running-back blast between the offensive guard and a tackle for a gain of 15. I have the data your helmet sensors picked up from the game, your pattern of eye shifts, blinks per minute, the angle of your vision at any given time. Today, we're going to run through virtual scenarios that challenge what your eyes take in to see if we can elevate your mental game. Then, I'll overlay the new data and we'll see where we are. Ready?
Ready.
On the next play, pay attention to the camera's angle. It was mounted dead center above your face mask, so it gives a good indication of your visual focus. He watched the play through, almost as if it was new footage. Of course, he had lived it, but it was like rewinding a moment of your life you barely remembered, just to relive the intensity. When the play died, another 8-yard gain, she stopped the footage and rewound. What did you notice?
The Giants' defensive line makes too much money. That was pathetic.
Anything else?
No.
Watch again. Claire rewound the recording. This time, Marcus glanced around at the widest angles. The first time, he'd seen Hewitt, Keene, and Chagai, but he missed the wide-open Walcott downfield.
I had a guy open.
Number 16.
Walcott.
Walcott was in your immediate left sightline. Now watch the next 3 plays. Marcus did, hyper-focused now on his sight patterns. Fucked if he ever looked close left.
Shit. How long have I been doing that?
Most likely it was a habit developed in your early days of football. Out of 68 plays Sunday, this deficiency in your sightline came up 31 times, a full 45%. These patterns can be hard to break. The first step is awareness.
Give me something else.
The new knowledge electrified his nerves. He sat forward on his cushion, anticipating another secret. The screen faded to black, then blinked to life late in the 3rd quarter. In the far corner, she had overlaid the visual with game stats. He zeroed in on the down and the game clock to refresh his memory. He recalled the running play seconds before it unfolded on the screen. 6 blinks. The average is 15 to 20 per minute. Being on the high end of that on a 15-second play, given the conditions of lighting and grass, isn't out of the norm. Now the next one. She forwarded to the start of the next play, an incomplete pass. Take a guess how many blinks?
10.
20. A graphic superimposed over the stopped recording compared the number of blinks during running plays versus passing plays. On nearly every passing play, his blinks doubled.
But that's involuntary, right? Nothing I can do?
Not entirely. If you're aware it's happening, you can start to minimize. And we can look at ways for the tech to mitigate the light reaching your eye without obstructing your vision.
Why do I do that?
Most likely on a passing play, the angle of your head or helmet changes. You take in more stadium light, or in the case of day games, sunlight. I'd be willing to bet this stat is drastically different on games with precip or cloudy conditions. The next graphic showed the accumulated time lost on the game clock to blinks, 42 seconds. In NFL time, almost an entire possession.
Unbelievable. What other numbers do you have?
Seems like I recall someone saying numbers aren't the way to greatness.
That someone knew nothing of your witchcraft.
Claire laughed, a rich string of hiccuping notes that filled the room. The sound eased his blood pressure and gave him the space to be himself. He wanted to hear more, so he pushed more. If this tech playground was what gave her joy, He wanted to run free in this space, if only for a little while. They ran through the game, start to finish. This time, Marcus put himself squarely in the game, engrossed in eye movement and blinks. He improved his data considerably, enough that Claire's enthusiasm proved infectious.
What else can this tech do?
In case you ever play in Barrow, Alaska. She ran a second quarter down, his best of the game, a 35-yard bomb. But this time superimposed near whiteout conditions on the field, complete with puffs of intermittent smoke emitting from the helmets of other players.
Damn, that got polar.
You blinked 17 times on that play.
Wind chill.
He had played football for 17 years. Never had he had so much fun running through tapes.
What's next?
From behind him, the sound of mad typing skills on a laptop. Same play. This time, locusts replaced snowflakes.
Aw, man, I gotta close my mouth. That's nasty.
No, this is nasty. Same play, raining keen heads. Marcus removed his helmet and devolved into body-racking laughs, his stomach cramped around his recent meal. In a million years, he wouldn't have guessed this side of Claire Winifred existed. Her laughter was infectious, innocent, uninhibited. He still didn't believe her tech would make much of a difference, but he enjoyed the process. Too much. She swiped beneath the heavy makeup at her eyes in her recovery, slow to catch her breath. Tension effectively broken, he dared to ask.
Tell me what you wanted to say last night, Claire.
Her joyous expression sobered. He didn't want the looseness between them to slip away, so he made his way to her, trying to hold on to their newfound connection.
Tell me,
he prompted again, this time a whisper. She pressed her lips together, much as she had the day before, a tell when she grew nervous. The room grew quiet, but for the faint hum of her computers. I think you're used to women falling all over themselves to be with you, so if you blamed the kiss on me, you wouldn't have to admit you felt something too. And maybe, away from this place, this situation, I don't measure up. Putting the kiss on me absolved you of poor judgment, and you're careful about letting people close because of who you are and where you came from.
You wanted to say all that?
Claire nodded.
Mostly insightful, partly wrong, but you missed the real truth.
What's that?
That I was waiting for you to kiss me first.
She broke eye contact. Her gaze slipped low and lingered on his lips before breaking free to somewhere beyond his shoulder, somewhere reason resided. To feed your ego? Her words should have sparked annoyance. They didn't. The question was hushed, a bit breathless, barely there. From a place of curiosity, not judgment.
To be sure. My entire football career, I've been surrounded by yes people. People who let me have my way, who don't challenge what I say or do or think. People who aren't honest. I learned a long time ago to let people come to me.
I can't do this. We shouldn't do this.
It's just a kiss, Claire. Not a free agency trade.
I don't know what that means. Marcus chuckled.
All right. It's not a catastrophic systems failure.
That I understand. She leaned in and kissed him. He expected a chaste union, something befitting her careful personality, her calculated and organized world. What he got took him from playfully amused to rock hard and panting for more, faster than it took her to coax his tongue free. She entered into the kiss with the poise of a center, the fire of a punt returner, and the commitment of a seasoned veteran. With great effort, Marcus pushed his need away. This wasn't about sex. And she just wasn't any woman who had drifted into his world. She was Claire, a brilliant mind in a spellbinding package who believed she was unworthy of him. This was about proving her wrong. Always proving her wrong. He deepened the kiss, wondering how long she would allow him free rein inside the warm, sweet playground of her mouth, praying for 10 seconds, then 10 more. He ached to devour her, knowing this might be all she would ever allow, but wanting her to believe without question she was desired. Almost as soon as the kiss began, it ended. She withdrew, her lips swollen and glossy. And he felt something. Something not tied to his gratefulness for her help on the field, or the trip he got when unattainable women felt the rush of kissing someone famous for the first time. He felt something completely unrelated to the game of football. Marcus felt himself. And no debilitating injury or bad press or catastrophic failure between end zones could rival the terror in that. He had come from nothing. He was still nothing when the game was taken away. By younger, healthier players. By owners who didn't share his vision. By a woman who had the power to strip him of his instincts and the image he had created.
I have practice.
Not for an hour, but she didn't have to know that. He grabbed his helmet and trash and headed for the door.
I'll see you.
Claire nodded, her lips pressed into a thin, defeated line. He couldn't leave her that way. Damn near killed him. So he smiled, hoping she would do the same. She didn't. Chapter 6. Every Wednesday, the road leading into the practice facility turned into Food Truck Row. Sterling encouraged the team to partake, to mix with fans who had special invitations to come out to watch practice, and to give back to the local businesses for their unyielding support. Marcus had had the shittiest practice in recent memory. He couldn't blame Claire. He always took responsibility, even when poor outcomes clearly fell to other sources. But he did blame the way he handled the kiss. Every spare thought not on the game returned to her. After showers, Keene suggested they hit up their favorite hoagie truck. Lobsters flown in overnight from Maine. Best sausage on wheels. But even the rare sun peeking through the early January clouds did little to brighten Marcus's mood. Until he saw Claire.
"The hell is she doing?"
said Keene. Marcus's first spicy bite of Italian meatball on sourdough stalled in his mouth. Beyond a few statues and architectural features of the nearby park, under a thick canopy of 200-year-old American elms, Claire contorted her body into unbelievable yoga poses, all supported on one foot like a plastic flamingo staked in a lush lawn. Her clothes were understated, earthy grays and browns, decidedly un-Claire-like in their ordinariness. Despite her attire's full length, its snug fabric left little of her trim, lithe body to the imagination. Keene gave his elbow a shove.
"You got a little..."
He swiped his finger across his chin.
"Sauce?
Drool, my friend?"
Come on."
Still, Marcus touched the back of his hand to his chin, just in case. In one moment, Claire leaned forward, hand to the earth, ankle curled to the branches above. In the next, she was on tiptoes, or bending in half like a lawn chair.
"You should talk to her," said Keene. "Woman like that gets under your skin. We all screwed for Sunday's game." "She not under my skin."
"No."
"Since when are you the first one on the practice field?" "Since Sterling wants to replace me?"
"I don't know what's going on with you two, but Jada seems to.
Woman's got radar for shit like this. Claire's good people, man."
He indicated toward her with a nod of his chin.
"Probably the first thing she's done for herself in a long time."
Marcus took another robust bite. His body nearly collapsed at the foodgasm in his mouth. Muscle fatigue, he told himself, and just the right amount of red pepper. At that moment, a man and his son walked up, pad of paper and pen in hand. Keene ran interference, loudly joking that his autograph was worth more than Kingston's, and pulling promotional tickets to Sunday's game out of his jacket pocket, all smiles. The fans gushed and reached for their phones. Marcus seized the opportunity to slip away. He approached Claire as he would have a delicate fawn with a startle reflex. The last thing he wanted was to upset her balance and send her toppling, though he wouldn't mind the opportunity to make a catch worthy of the next day's highlight reel. Rogue's quarterback turns running back, epic catch of fans' yoga pretzel. She reached and struck a pose that stretched her out like a bow. At each hold, her eyes slipped close, and her chest rose and fell. But on this one, her gaze fell upon him as he approached. Claire untangled her limbs and repositioned herself to standing on 2 feet. To say Marcus was disappointed was an understatement. Of course, he didn't consider yoga athletic, but to know she took care of her body immediately tapped into his earlier drive to be close to her. He wouldn't have blamed her for being icy, but she smiled, genuine, peaceful, an expression that included her eyes, and it nearly staked his heart. "Eating again, I see?"
4,500 calories a day during the season.
He indicated his sandwich, still steaming despite the chilly air.
Best sandwiches in the city. Want a bite?
20-plus women over the course of his dating history would have balked at the messiness, asked a million questions about ingredients and organic content, or given a 5-minute oration about the fat-to-protein ratio. Not Claire. She took a ravenous bite and made a distracting show of mopping up the detritus with her tongue and moaning her pork and beef adoration. Between the creative sex poses and the meatball as foreplay, Marcus nearly fed his sandwich to the pigeons. He had to get something solid beneath him.
Let's sit.
He indicated a nearby bench, and they settled in to watch a nearby 3-on-3 game of touch football. They alternated bites until the sandwich was gone. "I'm sure that happens everywhere you go."
Women eating my food?
Claire laughed and indicated a cluster of teenage boys walking by, trying to snap a covert photo. Marcus hadn't noticed. He stood and shook each of their hands and posed for proper photos, then rejoined her.
You get used to it.
"I'm not sure I could. I like my privacy."
You learn ways to protect it. When I'm here near the practice dome or the stadium or out doing community events, pretty much everywhere during the season, I sort of belong to them, the city. When it's off-season, I tend to be selfish.
That was one reason Clay was such a big fan of yours. Said you were one of the first to volunteer on the USA Tour during the draft year.
I thought he was a Seahawks fan.
That's the jersey he left behind. He took your number 11 with him. Marcus felt like his ribs had cracked open to let in the cold.
I'm honored he was a fan. What I do is nothing compared to what those men and women do. Nothing I do will ever matter like that.
Look what you just did for those boys.
Photos?
Memories. Sometimes that's all any of us have to get through the hard times.
Tell me about him. Something besides his stellar choice in athletes.
She grinned and took in the movement of the touch game in the distance. Her gaze turned wistful. Clay wanted to be a nurse. Said doctors were too hands-off for his taste. Patient contact was where he wanted to make a difference. He learned sign language because he fell in love with a deaf girl, and he learned Chinese because he made friends with a heart transplant patient named Jinhai. Never met a stranger.
He sounds amazing.
He was killed in a small arms battle with the Taliban. We never got definitive word about what that meant. Close quarters, urban warfare, I suppose. I always felt like the army hid something, like they hadn't told us the truth. Marcus was drawn to her eyes. She didn't blink, far from the 15 to 20 per minute average, almost trance-like. He wondered if she wore the extra smudges of makeup beneath her lashes to mask her grief. One of his fellow soldiers, Nathan, he wrote my father a letter not too long after, said their night vision equipment was intermittent that night. Radios were down. A sandstorm had rolled in. Better wearable tech, and all 5 of those men would be home now. And with that, her mission cemented. Why she worked so hard for a game she cared nothing about. Why she wore her professionalism like body armor. Why she lived and breathed for what she had created. She couldn't bring Clay back, but she could ensure others would not live with the same loss. He remembered his caustic words when they'd met.
And this is what you want, Miss Winifred? A fat bank account? A title at some Ivy League school? People to notice you for something other than the way you dress?
God, he really was a fucking asshole.
I'm sorry, Claire, for all of it. That you have to go through life without a brother. That I gave you such a hard time.
That I walked out on you this morning, when all I wanted to do was stay.
That I didn't ask you about him last night when you wore his tags.
She nudged his good shoulder with hers. That you didn't ask me to dance? Warmth rippled through his belly. Nothing whatsoever to do with the hot hoagie.
That too.
I get it.
No, you don't, Claire. What you said this morning was mostly true. But not the part about you not measuring up. See, it's me that doesn't measure up. If you knew me, really knew me, you'd look the other way. I'm not proud of my past. I've done shameful things in the name of survival. I cover those things with greatness. Hope people look the other way. We work toward the same goal. We both get what we want. I give you my word. Simple as that.
No more grief?
No more grief.
Though he couldn't say the same about her. He couldn't do anything about her brother's passing, but he could do something about her grief here, now.
Ever play football?
Her gaze trailed his stare to the young men running routes and taking full-on smack. Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Come on.
When she hesitated, he took her hand and tugged her toward the impromptu game. He introduced himself, a practice his mentor Saul taught him. Never assume people know you. That's the moment you put yourself ahead of the game. He asked if they minded playing with a rocket scientist like Claire, at which she promptly protested and made a break for it. Marcus scooped her back and held her in place, the length of her back against his front. He showed her the proper grip on the ball. She was too smart, picked it up too fast. Marcus had hoped to hold her against him longer. She tossed a few wobbly passes to some of the other players. What she lacked in upper body strength, she more than made up for in accuracy. The guys learned to play things tight, and soon she made decent passes, even nailing a few spirals. Each time a guy caught her throw, she launched off her feet in a bouncing celebration worthy of the Super Bowl end zone. And Marcus remembered the high of football. Coach Banna would have had a coronary, him risking injury on something like this, but he didn't care. Sometimes it took bringing things down to earth and stripping the game back to basics to remember those early days with Saul. The kids played it low-key, but their energy rocketed from what he had observed earlier. Marcus joined the defense, content to let Claire shine at quarterback. She passed more Brett Favre in quicksand, delighted at her new skill. Marcus never let an opportunity slip to toss her words back at her.
The azimuth of your eye scan downfield is anomalous. Faster, not harder. Your default scan of the field is left, right, left, sky, turf, my ass.
To which she invariably blew him a kiss or stuck out her tongue. The guys treated her with kid gloves, giving her bear hugs instead of sacks, but she held little back. One kid, Oliver, even ran the full length of their field with her on his back. He set her down gently on the grass in their imaginary end zones. She dissolved into laughter, ruddy-cheeked and with a full halo of dried leaves in her hair. To Marcus, she had never looked better. Game over, Marcus posed for photos with the guys. For one shot, Oliver insisted Claire memorialize her chokehold down the field, then texted it to her phone. The guy was probably hoping for a lasting connection to Marcus, but Claire received the group photo as if she had just won a Nobel Prize. Walking back to the practice field, just the two of them, she confessed. I had no idea football was so
Fun?
invigorating.
More than yoga?
I may never do another modified eagle pose again. She practically skipped along beside him. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Seriously, thank you. I think I understand better now how much goes through your head as the team leader. It makes me want to tweak the tech to put less of a burden on you.
Music to my ears.
When do you leave for Denver?
Plane goes wheels up in 2 days. Banna always schedules an extra day at practice altitude.
I believe in you, Marcus. Eggert isn't ready. He doesn't have the situational awareness you exhibit. His mechanics are faster, but you beat him in the mental game. Every time.
Unfortunately, those quantifying numbers you turn in don't always reflect the mental game. They'll inform Sterling's decision after Sunday's game.
Claire stopped, waited for his eye contact. I won't alter them.
I'd never ask you to. But we have to be real here, Claire. You're here as either my savior or my downfall. And I won't let you be my downfall.
His voice emerged with more edge than he'd intended. They were good at that, casual one moment, adversaries the next. He was fast losing his ability to keep up. "Just win Sunday, okay?"
A Rogues fan now, are we?
His levity didn't preserve all the yardage they'd gained together that day. Her next statement had all the seriousness of an unfavorable spread prediction. "No. But I am a Kingston fan." She whipped out one of those toe-curling yoga poses to stretch her height, gave him a kiss on the cheek, and jogged off toward the staff annex. Keene's warning echoed in his mind.
Woman like that gets under your skin. We all screwed.
Thursday and Friday passed in a blur. Claire devoted prime slots to Marcus, making her equipment available at all times to accommodate his trainers, his physical therapy, his workouts, team practices, and a flurry of meetings, most of which involved him as leader of their team. They grabbed an hour here, 90 minutes there, seeing each other morning, afternoon, and evening, until the team flew out Friday night. Had Marcus not seen progress, he might have cut back or ended their sessions altogether. But his numbers improved, and their interactions felt like a rising tide of optimism, tempered with a subversive gravity. Sunday was D-Day, Decision Day. So Claire and Joe worked overtime to craft VR simulations under forecasted lighting and snow flurry conditions expected in Denver, and overlaid the movements of every number of the offensive line based on simulation models she had secured over the past few weeks. The simulations were pixelated and imperfect, but they captured characteristic motions and running gait and timing, everything essential to put the entire playbook at Marcus's disposal. By the time he boarded the team charter bound for Colorado, he had virtually quarterbacked an additional 3 games and run through drills in all visibilities. With the exception of a trip to the store to restock groceries and a favor to a friend to check on her place, Claire spent the weekend on a sectional couch large enough to accommodate the Rogues' entire defensive line. Joe made repeated attempts to drag her out for activities she labeled fun, but sleep became a demanding beast. She missed Marcus, but had caught her breath enough to realize he was a limited way station on the road to her goals. Cryptic and frightening, sounding past aside, he had an endless supply of women and a zero room in his life for anything but the great American pastime. As a reminder of her mission, Claire enlarged and printed her brother's military photo and slipped it into frames on the coffee table, the entry table, and her bedside table. Joe thought it was overkill. Claire thought it necessary. She heard the Rogues' score broadcast on the way to the team facility Monday morning. According to the radio show, the Rogues had beaten the Broncos in a sloppy overtime performance. At the mention of Marcus, she tweaked the volume. Every comment seemed to center around his shoulder. Her stomach twisted around her morning bagel. The prevailing opinion was the team would not make the playoffs. Claire snapped off the radio. Joe had told her she should watch the game. Claire viewed it as 3 hours of her life gone. Instead, she watched an old Montgomery Clift Western Clay loved, Red River, had a memorable encounter with the neighbor's pack of fuzzy chows while getting the paper, ordered the best Thai food she'd ever tasted, and wrote enough lines of new code to wallpaper the borrowed apartment. Armed with fresh data she had downloaded from the team's traveling server and a file cluster Coach Banna had emailed her, she arrived at the practice field just after 5 a.m. to set up her equipment and run reports. By 6:30, Marcus hadn't shown, but Colin had. She hooked up lower body sensors to the eager backup quarterback and worked him through feet positioning routes the quarterback coach had given her the previous week. At 7:45, Marcus stormed into the field like a hornet had flown inside his jockstrap.
What's he doing here?
He asked Claire, as if Eggert were a child, incapable of answering for himself.
Hey, man, it's all right.
Colin's tone was placating, his all right more like aight. He stepped between Claire and Marcus, hands splayed. Marcus gripped Colin's shirt and gave him a shove. "What the hell?" said Claire.
He ain't supposed to be here.
She didn't know if it was his amped testosterone or being around his teammates that always devolved Marcus's grammar. "I invited him to stay when you didn't show." Colin yanked free of Marcus's grip and backed away. His expression went from scowl to nod. He adjusted his shirt.
Important game coming up. I gotta prepare.
Marcus came at him again.
You son of a...
Claire stepped between them. "Both of you knock it off." There's $250,000 worth of equipment here, and you won't want to be within a 4-block range if your little pissing contest destroys any of it. The moment Marcus's gaze collided with hers, he blinked out of his rage trance. His exhales were hot and fast, his nostrils flared like a bull teased by a billowing flag. Still, his eyes locked onto hers. It was powerful and frightening and breath-stealing all at once. "Colin?" "Yeah, Claire Bear?" A muscle in Marcus's jaw tremored at the nickname. "Do your 100-yard sprint and we'll take a reading." "Sure thing." Claire had never heard Colin's voice so sickeningly pleasant, contrasting starkly with Marcus's growls. He lined up on the end zone chalk and took off down the field. "Jesus, Marcus, what's gotten into you?" "He's just waiting, Claire. Just waiting for me to fuck up." "Isn't that the purpose of a backup quarterback?" Deep trenches formed between Marcus's brows. "Whose side are you on?" "The numbers. I'm on the side of the numbers." Marcus shook his head, scooped up a stray football near his feet, and paced 3 circular steps until he was right back where he started. "You watch the game?" "No." "Why not?" "Oh, Claire!" Colin yelled from the far end of the field. The hornets, stinging Marcus, multiplied and swarmed her own rib cage. She fired back. "Again!" With more sharpness than she intended. Colin sprinted. "I didn't need to. I have all the game data." "How the hell are we going to do this if you don't look up from your spreadsheets long enough to understand the game?" "I understand you won. That's all I need to know." "This is my life, Claire." "For God's sake, Marcus, it's a game. It isn't war." Marcus nodded and backed away, his jaw cocked open as if she had surprised him with the right cross. You're right. You're right, Claire. It's a game. We win, you get what you want." "Marcus, don't leave." Colin streaked back through the end zone, his shoulders heaving with effort. "How was that?" "Run like a true starter." Marcus spat out the words and fired the football at Colin, cruise missile style. Colin caught it and smiled. After a stare-down that contained the subtext of a week's worth of team drills and a fist fight to rival the climax of Red River, Marcus walked off the field. Chapter 7. It took Marcus 10 minutes to ice his temper about Eggert, and 10 hours to work up the courage to go to Claire's apartment. He had spent most of his day off at the hive, ordering new equipment and trying to forget his familiar pattern of pushing people away when they got too close. Strapping on a pair of boxing gloves had always reduced him to his essence. The gloves stripped away his glory, his fame, all the history he had clawed through to separate the man from the boy, until Marcus was left with the truest version of himself. The version he allowed no one to see, the version Claire drifted so dangerously close to. His anger toward Eggert was a riptide, ever present, lying in wait, but beyond the area in which he swam most days. Manageable. Deeper than he was willing to plumb, for it would mean his time on top was coming to an end. But seeing Eggert with Claire, in his space, in his capacity, using the familiar nickname, it instigated a rogue wave of jealousy that leveled him and tipped him into his old impulsive way of dealing with things. Blood and fear and strike before struck. So, he pummeled the boxing bag with his good arm, spent the day filling the emptiness inside with the kids from the neighborhood, and went to her apartment to apologize. He brought her a gift from Darius, a flower sprouted between the concrete cracks behind the gym, because Darius believed it was an omen of hope. Good things to come, as his grandmother always said. Marcus didn't have the heart to tell him it was a weed. Nevertheless, Marcus held on to the stem as tightly as he held on to the hope that the man Claire saw today on the practice field hadn't made her want to distance herself. Run. The only way through it was the truth. Saul had taught him that. Marcus straightened his collar and knocked. She didn't answer, but he thought he heard movement inside. He pulled out his phone and sent her a text. "I'm sorry. Please open the door." He waited,
Nothing. I'm out, Claire. I'm sorry I failed you. The nothingness decayed his gut. Marcus turned to leave. Tumblers cleared the lock, the door opened. A slice of Claire appeared, disheveled and quirky and perfect. She wore a shirt that extended to her bare toes, patchworked out of old t-shirts, a million different colors, though he couldn't discern all of them. Beer shirts and travel shirts and Greek letters. Somehow he knew they had been Clay's. Her eye makeup was smeared, ashen. He felt certain he had added to the grief already there. She held her phone. No chance to run from the truth now. He held out the tiny yellow bud. From Darius. She took it. A ghost of a smile touched her nude lips. May I come in? The door opened wider, but she didn't wait for him. She padded quietly to the kitchen, filled a glass of water from the sink's filter spout, and watered a cactus near the sink, like she intended to float it out to sea. City noise filtered through an open patio door. The room's ambient temperature felt the same as outside. A chill skipped along each vertebrae in his back. As if sensing it too, Claire wrapped her open hoodie around her tank top like a bandaged wound. Can we sit? Claire shrugged and followed him to the sitting area with a killer view of the skyline. Somehow, somewhere along the way, the woman before him had become the only view that mattered. I was late this morning because I met with team doctors and my orthopedic surgeon. I took a sack in overtime that set my shoulder back. A bruise, really, but any other direct trauma could take me out for the rest of the season. They want to take it week by week. But Eggert is in against Oakland. And you believe this somehow fails me? A hit over which you had no control? If I don't improve, your work remains unproven. I sink, you sink. Instead of sitting, she drifted to the glass door and looked out at the sunset. What you must think of me. That I would care more about my technology than I would about you being hurt. We're alike, you know. Our passions sometimes run from us. If we don't rein them in, they run, unchecked. She lost him. He couldn't help but think she addressed something greater. His gaze drifted to the coffee table, to a man in uniform who had Claire's eyes tucked into a rigid frame preserved behind glass. Again, Marcus felt unworthy. It's my instincts, Claire. I used to sense them coming, the hits. Not much different than a soldier in battle, I suppose. You settle back into this unthinking place and pray like hell your training kicks in before you get leveled. I'm losing those instincts, Claire. I've already lost them with you. She turned to face him. I don't know what that means. You got me mixed up and sideways. I never thought I knew where I wanted you, how to be around you without being with you, but I'm not so sure anymore. Knowing how we left it, that I had turned into someone I used to be, and you witnessed it, I'm just not him anymore, and I need you to know that. Why do you care what I think? Because you're real. Unaffected by the things other people preoccupy themselves with, how much money I make, what kind of car I drive, how many first down conversions I put up, and how it compares to 31 other quarterbacks around the league on any given Sunday. You care about how I feel, what I want. You say you want things for the team over yourself, but I didn't see that today, Marcus. You had a setback, 1 week, maybe more. I thought you were the kind of man who puts actions behind his words. If you really believe in team over the individual, you'll help me prep Colin for next Sunday. He isn't you, but with your help, he could come close. I built him up, he replaces me. Then where would I be? You'd still be Marcus Kingston. The guy who built a gym so kids on the streets would have a place to go but told no one about it. The guy who gives his body and his heart to this community every moment of every day, just so that they can have a little escape from their lives 1 day a week. The guy who shook my brother's hand in Afghanistan 1 week before he died and told him he was the real hero,
which is far more than I ever told him when I had the chance." Marcus heard her tears before he saw them, tangled in her throat, mixed with her words of self-reproach and regret. He still didn't trust his instincts with her, but not because he couldn't guess when she needed him. They volleyed hot then cold, lit then detached. But his greatest fear came from not pushing her too far, but not pushing far enough, because he would always be that 16-year-old with a smoking gun in his hand. He stood and pulled her into his arms. She draped against him without hesitation and brought with her the rain and the soft hint of flowers, real flowers, that gave him hope. Hope that there was a life beyond the game that had saved him. Hope that he wouldn't fall back to old friends and familiar habits. She made him want to be better, to be worthy of an adoring love like she had for her brother.
He knew. With the love you have for him, he knew.
She made a deal of drying the spot she'd created on his shirt. He didn't care. He wanted 100 more just like them, all meant for him. Her eyes were wet and round and vulnerable, her lips already parted to accept him. He wanted her more than ever, but not like this, not on her wave of grief.
"Tell Colin to be there tomorrow first thing. We'll do this together."
Claire nodded. He kissed her. Not a chaste gesture in the middle of a downtown park or a curiosity sated, but a possession of her lips that left little to interpretation. He loved that she tasted familiar, if slightly salty from her tears. Her answering counter-pressure spun his head, suspended time. When the heat spiraled to his groin and the thought of being inside her made his palms itch, he pulled back.
"I want you, Claire. But I know you won't cross that line until you've analyzed it and put it on a spreadsheet and written a program about it."
She smiled against his lips. Hot gusts of breath mingled with his, honing his instincts. Her body was dangerously close to outpacing her gifted mind.
"Do what you need to do."
He brushed a thumb across her sodden cheek and kissed her forehead.
"I'll wait."
Marcus left her apartment. It wasn't until he reached ground floor that his stomach turned leaden. Training Colin meant speeding up Marcus's inevitable departure, and falling in love with Claire was sure to be his downfall. 4 days into Marcus and Colin's combined sessions, Claire struck the perfect balance between old-school films and cutting-edge VR. Marcus had scoured old tapes for plays to address Colin's problem areas, namely failing to relax in the pocket and allowing his offense time to do their job. Plays that materialized late to great output, while Claire crafted VR overlays with the existing players. At each sequence, Marcus welcomed Claire's suggestions and took Colin through a methodical verbalization of Marcus's thought process, often replaying the footage 50 times or more. The most extraordinary transformation, however, was in the dynamic between Marcus and Colin. In the numbers, Claire found tangible evidence that their time together was symbiotic. Colin tapped into the instincts of a great quarterback and produced indisputable gains in problem performance, specifically in details that escaped him because he had always relied solely on instinct. Shoulder injury aside, he was poised for the best games of his career. Twice that week, over shared meals, Claire had tried to tell Marcus the truth about why Sterling had hired her. He had flown her to Portland, sat her at the end of an impressive hand-carved cherry wood conference table, and asked her if tech made it possible to download the talents of one player into another. He promised her the world, her world, if she could make it happen. Train Colin Eggert to be the next Marcus Kingston. And she had. Under the guise of analyzing Marcus's game for improvement, she had become the secret weapon that all but effectively made him obsolete and ended his career. She hadn't counted on feeling responsible along the way. It had been a game. A silly game of football, wrapped up in an obscene amount of money, better used to fund safer military equipment and hundreds of other worthy causes across the globe. Until it wasn't a game. It was Marcus's life. A life he saw slipping away, and she had provided the grease. She took extra time packing her equipment that day at the practice field. Marcus sent Colin on and stayed to help, as he often did. While she secured the cords, He snuck up from behind, wrapped his arms around her, and planted a kiss on her neck. Claire felt the tingle all the way to her toes.
"You're amazing," he whispered.
The trick is the last 2 rotations. One time cinched and around the middle, and once to pull the plug through the loop. Never a knot.
"You know what I mean."
She did, but she felt far from amazing. Claire felt like a traitor.
"There's nothing you can't do with this tech. You're gonna revolutionize the way soldiers fight."
It isn't perfect yet.
"There's too much energy in pursuing perfection. It's an unattainable goal."
You don't understand. She wriggled from his grasp and began saving files she had already saved to get distance, to put space around her suffocating guilt. It didn't work.
"Then explain it to me."
His tone was blustery, the fringe edge of annoyance, like he was ramping up to dispute a ref call. She had less than 0 patience left for herself, much less anyone else, especially someone who equated winning a game to winning at something as important as a military campaign. I had my chance once, and I blew it. I can't make that mistake again. The tech has to be perfect.
"And all the time you've worked with me, and all the features you've added, the tech hasn't failed once."
It only takes 1 bug, 1 imperfect line of code.
"You want to know what I think?"
About my tech? Do tell.
"I think you're using my performance as an excuse to not try again. As long as I'm still out on that limb, you don't have to be."
How could she tell him he was already so far along the limb it had snapped beneath him? Her head pounded, her cheeks grew hot. She didn't want to have this conversation anymore. She didn't want this arrangement anymore, with her holding power over his fate. When had it all become so complicated? "You're forgetting one thing," said Claire, wrapping a USB cord around her hand, choking off her circulation. "Sterling said he would arrange the meeting when and if I proved my results."
"Sterling isn't the only path to the military brass. I shook a lot of hands on my tour of Afghanistan. 1 call, that's all."
"It's not ready."
"When will it be ready? 1 more day of casualties is 1 day too many."
Claire's heartbeat throbbed through her fist. She tried to slide the cord free, but succeeded only in cinching her hand worse and sprouting searing hot tears, equally ineffective. Her response unearthed, loud and wild, from somewhere dark inside she didn't recognize. "Don't you think I know that?" She dropped to her knees and tried to untangle the mess on her hand through a wash of moisture that made it impossible to focus. Marcus knelt beside her. His fingertips were cool. A few twists and the cord that had restrained her loosened, then unraveled to her lap. "I'll finish here." She wanted him gone. This wasn't her. At least not until Clay had the audacity to leave her. He promised he would come back, that he would be careful and stay safe. A promise made should be a promise kept. "Go."
"I won't leave you."
Another promise no one had the power to keep. "Please, Marcus. I just need to be alone." A long moment passed before he stood.
"Do what you need to do."
He turned and walked away. At the goalpost, he paused.
"You're the smartest person I've ever met, Claire. I'm not even worthy to be playing on the same field in life as you, if we're being honest here. But I know a little something about fear. It holds you back from greatness if you let it. It's time to get in on your game, your glory. No more sidelines."
Claire waited until he was out of sight to break down. When she had cried out everything she hadn't at Clay's wake and in the days that had followed, when she had purged all the energy inside in a thorough exploration of her failures to date, she curled up on the cool synthetic grass beneath her and stared at the bold white line in her vision. The sideline.
Chapter 8.
"He's right, you know." Jo handed Claire a mug of her favorite salted caramel cocoa and picked up her knitting needles. "I've been telling you the same thing for ages." The Saturday rain had been relentless. Noah's Ark relentless. A perfect match to Claire's mood. "It's different coming from Marcus."
Why? Why? Oh, because he doesn't understand the geek talk you hide behind when you talk to me? Or, oh yes, because he's the only guy in the history of ever who told you he wanted you, then let you decide when and where you planned to deflower him? Right. Claire's tone dripped with sarcasm. Because that hasn't been done a million times. Jo absently worked her latest creation, a lacy powder blue scarf. Restrained for her. Her hobby site lauded her most bizarre creations from octopus hats to Walking Dead dolls. I'll bet it's like nothing we imagine. Pro athletes are prime targets for manipulative women looking for a spotlight. After all the bad press, the league has probably threatened them within an inch of their contract. Beyond the intimacy, trust would be huge. He's so closed off. So worried I'll think of him as anything other than Marcus Kingston, quarterback for the Portland Rogues. He won't talk about his past. Where's the trust there? Have you asked him? Not explicitly. He just changes the subject. Oh, like you do about Clay? No one wants to go where there's pain. Jo was the only person who could mention Clay without upsetting her. Claire figured Jo had just as much right to him. Clay had once been madly in love with her. Somehow Jo was doing better in the grief department. It doesn't matter anyway. Once he finds out why I'm really here, he won't want anything to do with me. It's true, you should have told him sooner. But you elevated his game, too. The rest is up to him. Claire watched Jo knit an entire row, mesmerized by the practiced movement of her hands until her eyes blurred and she replayed her last few weeks with a totally different outcome. Maybe I should talk to him, she said at last. If that doesn't work, I could always knit him a Sir Galahad. Sir Galahad was code for the codpiece Jo had once knitted, complete with retractable hood. A deep ripple of laughter originated in Claire's core and spread through her limbs. She didn't know how she could have made it through any of this without Jo's mad skills as a programmer and best friend. We'll assume extra large, Jo added, her eyes alight. Until confirmation. Claire shoulder bumped her. Jo bumped back. Most days and nights the hive thumped with heavy bass and winding cadence of angry lyrics that reflected the attitudes of the kids who came. But everything about this day felt off. On this day, a Sunday, when he should have been clocking regimented sleep as game prep, Marcus had paced the halls of his place much of the night until he could no longer stand to look at the memorabilia of the athlete he had become. The athlete who was slipping away. At his gym, much like the gym Saul had back in Philly, in spirit if not in looks, Marcus found peace. No rap, just rain hammering the metal roof in the pre-dawn, washing away his crippling self-doubt. His shipment of endorsement shoes for his kids had arrived the week before. Marcus had been so tied up with Claire and Colin, he hadn't had a chance to distribute them. He spent the better part of the night cinching high tops into Roger's string backpacks and matching his boys' shoe sizes from their paperwork to locker assignments. Come Monday, after required check-in with his volunteers to ensure the boys attended school that day, they would find a surprise waiting for them. He couldn't guarantee the two items wouldn't get them into trouble out on the streets, but he could guarantee they would remember someone cared about them the way Saul had cared about him. He had nearly finished when his cell buzzed out a text tone. "May I come in?" Claire. His body jacked alive immediately, like wind spirits in an electrical storm. By the time he reached the entry door, bolting 2 steel steps at a time, his excitement had morphed into fear. Hazelwood crime didn't observe the Sabbath. Marcus unlocked the deadbolt, ushered her inside, then locked the door again behind them. Words of reprimand stalled on his tongue. On a day when the entire country would see someone else take his place, Claire wore her best homage to the sport, complete with his jersey. Well, her version of it. She had cut his number 11 in half vertically and added skinny denim jacket sleeves. Tights beneath her black skirt sported goalposts. What most caught his eye, however, was the barely visible dark corset beneath the jersey that lifted her breasts into a visual feast. "What are you doing here?"
He softened his words by pulling her into a strong embrace. I tried your place first. Then I remembered Keen saying you're here more often than not. Her hair braid dampened his chin. You're soaked. Let's get you a towel. He took her hand and led her the way down the stairs and into a laundry room tucked behind a back office. Past a wall of neatly folded towels, he opted to open the running dryer at the end of its cycle. He draped the toasty fabric over her head. He expected a smile, an appreciation for instant heat to fight back the morning chill, or maybe even thanks. He didn't expect to see her lips twist into the beginning mask of tears. I'm sorry, Marcus. For cutting up my jersey, you're forgiven. He delighted in the smile it elicited. Ain't never looked that sexy on me. I don't know about that. Smile for smile, he matched her. Long way for a booty call, Miss Winifred. What's on your mind? I think I made a mistake coming here, working for Sterling. I can't help thinking you'd be on that field today if I weren't here. He stepped closer and put his hand to the back of her neck. Claire, listen to me. No one has cared about me. Not Marcus Kingston MVP, not number 11, not Heisman candidate, but me, Marcus, since I was 14 years old. You came along when I needed hope, and you gave me that. But if I hadn't agreed, I wouldn't be in peak mental condition. No matter what happens, I'll always be grateful. There's something I have to tell you. A vague stab of apprehension buried in his gut. He didn't want this to be it, for her to tell him she'd decided to end whatever it was between them. So he diverted, a fake handoff designed to draw attention elsewhere. Come on. I'll show you around, then we can sit. Claire was a woman of cause. Equipment wouldn't impress her, but the philosophy behind the place would. He explained how he selected the kids, mostly referrals from Child Protective Services, school counselors. A few Marcus found hawking stolen goods on the street corners. Then showed her the pantry of high-quality food and the system run by the boys for keeping it clean and stocked. At the old school sign-in sheet, she offered to work up a basic program for a tablet check-in system so he could run a report and immediately know times and frequencies of the kids' gym usage. It's possible Marcus fell in love with Claire right then. They entered the cage and sat cross-legged on the Hive logo, center mat. He thought she might tell him right then she had decided to keep her distance, focus on saving soldiers instead of saving him. Instead, she asked about the person who cared about him when he was 14. This is my spreadsheet, said Claire. Her way of saying she had to know the truth, the real Marcus, before she made her choice. His name was Solomon Douglas, former Navy man, boxer. His boy went to a prayer meeting at church. Hail of bullets hit the windows. Right place, wrong time. In his grief, Saul opened up a gym on the next block. Invitation only to keep the violence outside. In exchange for food in our bellies, we had to prove ourselves, make the grades, stay off the streets, and at home helping our families or at a job. And we had to strive for excellence. Sports, college, life. He must have seen something special in you. To this day, I don't know what. First time I met him, I stole his wallet. Had a gun shoved in my pants, but I was shit scared to use it. Called him every derogatory name I could think of. He told me I could keep the cash if he could have his wife's photo out of the plastic sleeve. Said she was what saved him. Then he tried to save me. I wouldn't have it. I took the wallet and ran. Tossed it in a dumpster on the next street. I ran into him a few hours later at a convenience store. He wanted to know why I bought milk with his money instead of drugs. I told him to fuck off, but he must have followed me back to the fire escape I was living under. Every day I'd come back and there'd be a paper sack full of food. What happened to your parents? Same old story. String of stepfathers. Mother on government assistance. When I was 13, she ran off with her boyfriend, and I went to stay with my father. He'd tried straight and narrow and sober. Failed every time. When he found out my mom kept the monthly checks meant to raise me, he turned me out. For $100 a month, he turned me out. I looked for my mother for a year. Never found her. To Claire's credit, she didn't offer empty words.
There were none, really. She simply reached for his hand. He charged ahead before his courage failed him. Those paper sacks became my lifeline, but Saul never showed himself, never pushed. One night I'd fallen asleep, woke up to someone ransacking my stash. I was scrawny, couldn't fight, so I pulled the gun I'd taken from my old man. I only meant to scare them away, but one of them went down. Not dead, but could have been. Saul showed up at the juvenile lockup, claimed responsibility for me. Saul and his wife took me into their home that night, and every night after. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a faded, crumpled photo of a beautiful young black woman. I thought, maybe if I kept her, she would save me too. Tears threatened a vice grip on his throat. He stared at the ceiling, swallowed them back, sniffed hard. She did. They both did. Claire glanced around the hive, as if seeing it for the first time. You are so much more than a football player, Marcus. I wish you could see what I see. Saul used to say, help the kids who come after you. Not because you're famous, not because you have money, but because it's the right thing. 15 professional athletes had come out of that gym since the day he opened. 2 gold medal Olympians, a college coach, even a few brains like you. I want that here. He must be so proud of you. He died that season, heart attack, they said. But it was a broken heart. He studied the face in the photo. Her eyes showed the kindness she had demonstrated as long as he knew her. Irma died the week before. Cancer. She squeezed his hand and rested her forehead against his. He closed his eyes and breathed in her essence, wondering if she was his Irma, but admonishing himself for considering it. Love like Saul had for Irma was beyond rare. Marcus didn't deserve love like Saul's more than once in his lifetime. Thank you for telling me all this. Her words were soft, intimate. Her lips drew close to his. She hesitated, then captured them. His body ached from the enormity of what it meant. The truth, his truth, had not built a barrier between them. It had crumbled one. She deepened the kiss, and he accepted all she offered. His body responded at once, the jagged line between grief and ecstasy blurred. A cavernous hole had opened where he poured out his soul, and he wanted only one thing, one person, to fill the emptiness. But as abruptly as she began the kiss, she ended it. Claire bit her bottom lip playfully and tugged him to his feet, toward the cage door. I have a surprise for you. Come on. He protested with a full-body press against the cage. He wasn't sure he could get out of this cage, much less the building, without sinking into her fragrant warmth and telling her what it meant to him that she was still here, still with him. Claire persisted. She helped him cut the lights and lock up. Outside, the dry night sky lifted. With few clouds left and the storm moving out, the dawn promised sun. Where are we going? Someplace I guarantee you've never been. Chapter 9. For the life of him, Marcus had no idea why she'd brought him here. The view of the city was breathtaking, but she knew his penthouse had a 360 view of the city. Claire drove up a winding road, her 4-banger engine struggling against the grade. In the passenger seat, he felt like a praying mantis in a toy car, limbs folded, defending himself against an unknown ambush that had filled his companion with glee. Never broken down up here before, he said. She giggled. Shush, some of us can't afford an Escalade. Besides, Dimitri does just fine. You named your car? Joe did. Kinda hot, right? Only if the engine overheats. They turned off the road at a remote mailbox with the name J. Peter Smith painted on the side. A thick grove of young and old Douglas firs obscured their destination, but sun rays lit the field at the end of the dirt road like a spotlight. Marcus tried not to think about what mornings normally meant for him on game day. Light movement, massive hydration, steak and eggs, and Dixieland jazz sliding low through his headphones.
Saul had been from New Orleans, wanted to play trumpet his entire life until the army came knocking. The sound of the old greats never failed to reach inside Marcus, center him, make him feel invincible. Today he felt anything but invincible. In the clearing atop the hill's crest, a modest house came into view. Gabled roof, native stone, the grounds neat and trimmed. Claire parked at the semicircular drive, wriggled a crossbody bag around her torso, and waited for him to unroll himself from the seat, one limb at a time. "Who's here?" "No one today. One day a week, Joan gives her volunteers a day off. She asked me to look in on things each Sunday while she's in Finland." Claire used a key to unlock the side gate and led the way along a meandering garden path. A glass house, originally obscured by the stone residence but nearly twice its size, speared upward from the intricate gardens and stretched out across the remainder of the hill, almost the length of a football field. "Joan was one of my mentors in college. When her husband retired to Oregon, she made it her quest to learn everything she could about the area." "Flowers?" "Not just any flowers. She has the largest private collection of species native to the state, including a few that haven't been seen in nature in a decade or more." It was impressive, Marcus couldn't deny, but he still didn't understand why Claire had brought him here. "Joan is also one of the leading experts in the world on orchids. Buyers come to her from all over the world because of her unique hybrids." They entered the greenhouse, bathed in light. The entire structure had seemingly been designed to optimize sun exposure. At intervals along the building's length, glass partitions separated the larger shell into smaller rooms. The air was moist and fragrant, almost overpowering. She always said orchids were the closest plant species to humans. Their blooms have a symmetry that mimics the human face. They're simultaneously tough and fragile, and they grow in entirely different conditions from where they bloom. Claire reached inside her bag and withdrew a rectangular black box. "And their colors are unsurpassed." Marcus glanced around. He stood between rows of orderly tables with fuzzy, fern-like plants sprouting along each pathway, but he was still lost. "It's nice," he said, because he didn't want to hurt her. "I was closed-minded when I came to Portland. I didn't understand the value of football, the reason you punished your body day after day. I thought all athletes were dim-witted Neanderthals. Then I got to know one and found out he was the kind of person I aspire to be. Honest, courageous, compassionate. You opened my eyes, so I wanted to repay the favor." Claire opened the box and pulled out a pair of dark eyeglasses. His stomach twisted. He had heard about these filters to counteract colorblindness, had even considered getting a pair to try, but something always stopped him. What if the reality didn't live up to the hype? All it would do would cement his fear that he would have this weakness for the rest of his life. He preferred to dwell on the side of hope. "I don't know, Claire." "I spoke to the team doc. He saw no reason not to try." She had just called him courageous, the kind of person she aspired to be. And here he was, afraid to put on a pair of glasses. Claire had brought him all the way out here, to a theater of the mind for color. The least he could do was slip them on for a few minutes. Her eyes blinked, expectant, wide, excited. His desire to know their color, to feel their color far beyond what he intellectually knew as green, swayed him. Marcus nodded. He hooked the earpieces into place, no issue. His hand was slower to rest them on his nose. Perspiration broke out under his arms and along his lip. Why did greenhouses have to be so damn hot? He closed his eyes, slid the nose piece to his bridge, and breathed through the slightly sickening wave of nausea that bubbled around the emptiness where a high-carb meal usually resided by this hour on a Sunday. The frames were heavier than his aviators. "I don't know, Claire." His voice wavered. "Feels like a clutch play in the Super Bowl." "Take your time." He turned toward the largest stretch of greenhouse and opened his eyes. His nausea lifted. His eyes adjusted slowly after the brightness. The flowers crowded him,
lifting from their perches on leaves and blooms and scampering closer and closer, closer until he damn near tasted them. The disconnect between what he expected and what he saw left him suspended in time and thought and breath. Everything appeared outlined, sharp, distinct. Marcus reached for the closest bloom. "What's this color called?" "It's a light orange, like a ripe peach." "Orange," he repeated. As a variation of red, orange had always been a lighter version of apples and stop signs and the blood he had left on the field. "And this?" He stroked a petal on the next flower, soft as a woman's skin. "The outside is yellow, the inside burgundy." "I never knew what burgundy was. That the color of the Rogues?" "And the Redskins and 49ers. "Look at you," he teased, "knowing your teams. I'll make a football junkie out of you yet." Claire laughed. Talking with her, interacting with her, felt warm, comfortable. He wanted to stay in that place forever, but he had colors to see and someone special to inspire. He glanced across the rows of flowers, hundreds, thousands. Some colors clustered on multiple plants. Many stretched lone, high, unique. Marcus knew there were basic colors, like a box of 8 crayons. The brown of the football, the green of the field, the yellow and black of everything inside the hive. Never had he guessed there would be 20 variations of each. A sharp sting organized in his nose. His eyes watered. From the new input, from his pupils being overwhelmed, he told himself. But mostly because he would finally know Claire's eyes. He turned and tilted her chin to the sky, a sky such an impossible shade of blue it looked like a child's drawing. The brilliant sunlight filtered down through her dark lashes, thick with mascara. Her gray and silver and black makeup was all familiar colors because he never bought any other clothing. But her eyes, he sank into the hue of her eyes. Claire's simple description that day on the field, green, did not do them justice. Her eyes were a soft shade, velvety, with brown flecks. Individual colors coexisting within a hair's breadth of each other, no longer blending. He became lost in the spiral and thought that if he should never emerge, he would die happy. Green? Grateful the dark lenses concealed his tears, he pushed ahead with questions. He grasped for control where he felt none. Hazel, really. A mixture of green and brown. And mine? A blue lighter than the sky. More like a glacier. Marcus nodded. My father used to say I had my mother's eyes, like it was a bad thing. She was white. I always got teased. Never really fit in with the brothers, you know. Those blues single-handedly earned you People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive, sports category 2013. You saw that? Joe practically wallpapered our bathroom with it. Marcus laughed. Heat that surpassed the greenhouse temperature migrated to his cheeks. I don't know what to say, Claire. Tell me again that you want me. And then I'll show you the best part of my surprise.
Sorry, readers, here's where we fade to black due to YouTube explicit content guidelines. If you dream for the steam, you'll need to take a look in the book.
This wasn't my surprise, you know. Her voice sounded like she had swallowed a dozen orchids, dry. There's more. Claire sat up, tugged him by his shirt to a standing position, and hopped free of the table. She wiggled out a striptease of her skirt and his jersey, still draped from her shoulders, that made him as hungry as a defensive end. Then she scooped up her clothes and heels and his glasses and scurried down the row and out of the greenhouse, her mouth wateringly bare backside, dimpling from the frenzied pace. What the fuck, Claire? The strangled desperation in his voice was laughable, but he pursued her with the mindset of a competitive athlete. Good, better, best. Claire was already the best, in every conceivable way. It was up to him to discover what she was beyond that. Game on. Chapter 10. Joan didn't believe in indoor living, which was why her house was so small. If people had to live indoors, she believed,
They should live under glass to get as close to nature as possible. Claire had discovered the glass bedroom on last Sunday's trip out to the property. Furnished sparingly with a few throw rugs, an old wooden toolbox filled with books, tiny trinkets lining the 1-inch thick structural crossbeam that ran the perimeter of the room, a simple, antique iron bed, and enough pillows and white linens to simulate clouds, the room was a masterful centerpiece against the frame of Joan's English gardens. Claire fairly ran up the few steps leading into the glass room, Marcus hot on her trail. She underestimated the pursuit of a quarterback. She never got that speed out of him during sessions. At the bedside, she dropped her collection of clothes on a colorful braided rug, placed his glasses safely on an open window ledge, and tumbled onto the bed. Marcus removed a foil packet from his wallet, placed it on the pillow, and climbed onto the bed after her. He pinned her in place with innocent kisses that traveled to not-so-innocent places on her body. Goose flesh spread along her inner forearms and thighs. His fingers re-entered her, and she seeped a fresh round of desire around them.
"This is my surprise." "That you're so slippery I can't catch you."
"That I want you to make love to me, here."
"Considered this, have you?"
"Only since the day we met." His fingertips stopped their skillful plundering.
"You hated me on day one."
"I thought you were the most magnetic man I have ever seen, with a temper to match. Would you really have dropped your pants in the conference room?" He gave her an easy peck on the lips to tease her.
"You'll never know."
"You had me after that? In the dark hallway?"
"Not my best moment."
"But there have been 100 best moments since then. Kneeling in the greenhouse is at the top of the list." A deep chuckle rumbled through Marcus's chest.
"Time for the team captain to take direction."
Claire gripped the hem of his t-shirt and tugged upward. He lifted his arms to accommodate the action until the cotton garment joined hers on the floor. She nudged him back, shoulder blades to mattress. He obliged, a lazy smile at his lips, then crossed his arms behind his head and stretched long. The hue of his sculpted torso was like blended dark roast and cream, a mesmerizing contrast with the snowy white duvet. The sunlight and the glass walls conspired to elevate the January air to the temperature of heaven.
Sorry, readers, here's where we fade to black due to YouTube explicit content guidelines. If you dream for the steam, you'll need to take a look in the book.
When he had caught his breath, he slipped into yoga jokes. Claire laughed against his kisses, placed his glasses back on his face, and asked him if he wanted a repeat performance, this time in Technicolor. Never one to back down from a challenge, Marcus took the game ball and ran. To Claire, the Rogues hosting the Oakland Raiders on the same day Marcus Kingston found color seemed the perfect irony. Maybe it was the universe's way of balancing out all he had seen and done that morning with the black and white of the task ahead. Marcus had been sidelined before for his injury, but the stakes had never been higher. If Eggert failed as a quarterback, the season was over. If Eggert succeeded as a quarterback, Marcus's career could be over. Claire sat in the Rogues' conference room post-game. 2 weeks ago, she had occupied the same seat. Spread before her were her game reports, organized by all the criteria the owner had laid out on day one. Sterling never waited for the Monday coaches' meetings. Absurd wealth, she supposed, bred impatience. So much had happened in 2 weeks. She found Marcus. Now she was poised to lose him. Eggert had played like a starter. Sterling charged into the room, too many teeth showing, too many words. Fresh off the height of a win that clinched the team's playoff berth, his robust persona made Claire want to crawl beneath the table or slip out the door. But he zeroed in on her, called her name so the room's occupants turned and began a round of applause aimed in her direction. She started calculating how quickly she could get to the nearest ladies' room. She smiled through it all. Inside, she felt sick.
"Our secret weapon,"
Sterling said. Those in attendance nodded their agreement. Glasses clinked in celebratory toasts.
Tell us your thoughts on the game, Miss Winifred.
Exciting, sir. Also heartbreaking, conflicting, and nausea-inducing.
Let's see what you've got for us.
Sterling poured himself a whiskey on the rocks and laid her data from one end of the table to the other. Each sheet showed numbers that lauded Colin's performance.
I requested the numbers comparison to Kingston. Do you have that?
The knot in her stomach crept to her throat and settled. She reached into her file and removed the reports. Sterling eyed the pages critically, his mouth twisting in variations of indecipherable thought, all while Claire could not help but notice the graph colors. Eggert in red and green and blue, Marcus in the default color of gray.
I'm sure you know the magnitude of the decision we'll be making regarding the playoffs. I need to know you stand behind these numbers.
She had a choice. Stand behind the data she knew was right and get her Pentagon meeting, or claim her tech still needed work and give Marcus a fighting chance to get back on top. His words charged from her memory.
Fear holds you back from greatness if you let it.
Claire glanced at the ring on her right index finger. Clay had given it to her the week he deployed. Engraved around the thick band of sterling silver, 2 birds in flight, connected by a string. She had worn it every day of her mission here as a reminder of why she had seemingly veered so far off course. Money and connections didn't come to her tiny little corner of a dusty computer lab. Money and connections wouldn't come again. Despite what they had shared, how close they had become, despite Claire's absolute conviction that she and Marcus together could be something really special, she knew once he found out she had betrayed him from the beginning, any hope of a relationship was gone. They're as accurate as numbers get, without error.
You're quite possibly smarter than all of us here put together.
The quip came off good-natured. Sterling's adoring group chuckled.
If you were in my position, Miss Winifred, which quarterback will win us a Super Bowl?
She found the question offensive, odious. If Marcus had taught her anything, it was the sport was a game of instinct. To base such a decision solely on what she, a computer nerd who had never even held a football before she came here, recommended was an insult to the game and everyone else in the organization who had made the sport the axis their lives rotated around. My PhD hardly prepared me for decisions about professional sports team management. Sterling smiled. He should have had yellow teeth from all the alcohol and cigars he shoved past his veal-colored lips. Their white perfection perfectly illustrated the veneer over the entire situation.
Don't be coy, Miss Winifred. You're closer to this decision than anyone here.
Claire wondered what they knew of her relationship with Marcus. Even an offhand remark by Keene or Eggert might reflect on her as someone less than professional. Marcus's head between her thighs flashed through her mind. She gripped the armrest of her chair in an effort to keep everything from slipping away. Her dreams, her goals, the happiness she thought she'd never feel again after she buried Clay. She glanced around the room. Coach Banna, Sterling's wife, the board members who wore splashes of Rogue's colors but failed to fully commit because it didn't fit into their carefully molded image.
It's time to get in on your game, your glory. No more sidelines.
Numbers don't lie, sir. It was a cop-out, falling back on the science. Merely a technicality that she had not told them precisely what they wanted to hear. Her body went numb, her brain shut down. She had to get to the ladies' room, but at least 12 people who weren't her people stood in the way, Sterling chief among them. He took her standing and circling the table as an invitation for a more intimate exchange. For one horrifying moment, she thought Sterling might hug her. Instead, he extended his hand. When she took it, he tugged her into his aura of confidence.
You've done everything I asked and more. Tomorrow morning, I intend to follow through on my part. Your world is about to change, young lady. Better hold on for the ride.
Claire couldn't be sure what she said or did in response. The room spun, and the door was blessedly close. She stepped out into the hallway. The door clicked closed behind her, lifting and carrying the joyful conversation of the powers that be away from her. In the hallway, cool air and silence. And Marcus. She covered her mouth with her hand, ineffectively holding tears and bile and self-loathing inside, and ran in the opposite direction.
Chapter 11. They'd barely waited for the numbers to cool. Coach Banna and Sterling had ambushed Marcus in the locker room after the media had trickled out, after the staff had been in to clear the mess left behind when 53 happy, sweaty football players had rampaged through like the running of the bulls in Pamplona. Marcus sat on the padded folded chair in front of his well-appointed, fine-grain wood dressing stall, feeling like he'd been kicked in the nuts. Twice. The one from Claire hurt worse than the one on the field. That's when he knew his mistake. He had allowed her past his barrier, and he had discovered time and time again vulnerability was the truest path to pain. He should have slept in, buried his face in his pillow, and let the storm clouds close in. But Mondays, since Claire came into his life, had always felt honest. New week, new chances, nothing but truth. And truth was something he needed more than the carrot Banna and Sterling had dangled. Wow us in practice this week and we might change our minds. So Marcus stood at a distance, his feet planted firmly on the sideline of the practice field, trying to find the courage Claire said he possessed. She was dressed in blacks and grays, flowing garments that hid her body like pajamas. He hadn't bothered with the glasses since they'd made love for the last time, cleaned up their mess in the greenhouse, and drove back to the city, hands linked. His reporting time had been noon. The hallway outside the conference room had been the last time he'd laid eyes on her. Until now. Hell, he didn't want it to be over. Woman like that gets under your skin, we all screwed. He took a deep, fortifying breath, crossed the field, and settled on the same stool from which she had started her orbit into his world. Marcus had held out hope it wasn't her, that Banna and Sterling had reached their conclusion on their own, that she had refused them her reports. But one look at her, all quivering bottom lip and tense brow and vacant red eyes, and he knew. God damn it, Claire. He kept his voice low, even, controlled, the same he had used in his most intimate moments with her, but with an unmistakable edge he couldn't siphon out. Tell me you didn't use me. Get close to me. To distract me from the grand plan. Tell me you didn't know. Because if you did, you aren't the person I thought you were. They asked me about my data. I wasn't going to lie, Marcus. I would never have asked it to. Eggert played a hell of a game, an MVP-worthy game. But that isn't what we're talking about here, is it? She hugged her arms, pulled them close like there was a chill in the air she was powerless to fight. He had never seen her so listless. Did you know all along that they intended to replace me? Replace me through you? I did the job that I came here to do. That's no answer, Claire. Did you know? Yes, but I never expected any of this. What, for me to fail? For me to fall in love with you. A caustic laugh burned up his windpipe and erupted from his mouth. He rose and paced the end zone, his hands awkward and shifty and rootless without a football to make the world drop away. Is that what this is, Claire? Because it sure as hell doesn't feel like it. Every single person in my life who claimed to love me has ended up betraying me. Every single person but one, and he's gone. As gone as the brother you keep chasing because you can't bear to have a life of your own, to allow yourself happiness because that's something he'll never have again. Fat tears charged down her cheeks. They nearly undid him. Congratulations, Claire. I guess your numbers got you what you wanted after all. I just hope when you get your tech into combat, when you realize men and women are wearing your life-saving gear, you realize there are other kinds of casualties not so easily solved with science. He turned toward the tunnel just as Eggert jogged on the field. Hey man, no hard feelings. Eggert reached out for him. A handshake, a casual bro greeting, something. Marcus looked at Eggert's hand as if he had just wiped his ass with it. Remember that when I make you look like a schoolyard nothing on his daddy's team this week in practice. Marcus continued walking. Man. Claire told Colin she was ill. She packed up her things and made her way to her car. The plan was drawn blinds, a soft pillow, and an endless box of tissues. But as Claire was fast learning, even the most solid plans go awry. Beside her parked car, a limousine and driver awaited. Miss Winifred. He gestured an invitation to climb inside the open back door. What is this? I'm not at liberty to say, miss. The limo could mean only one thing. Sterling had alluded to this the night before. She couldn't do this. Not today. I'm afraid there's been a mistake. No mistake, miss. Please. Claire glanced around for a hint of what was to come. The lot offered no clue. If she refused, it might compromise the gain on all she had lost. Reluctantly, she climbed in. Too upset to enjoy the luxury surrounding her, she repaired the damage to her eye makeup as best she could, then stared out the window at another gray Portland morning. The seemingly endless weather pattern of the city in winter had never bothered her before. Then again, it had never so precisely captured her mood. The limo traveled into the city's heart. At the most exclusive hotel in the city, the driver pulled through the semicircular drop-off. The partition between them slid away. He handed her a piece of paper, scrawled across it in blue ink, P4. Penthouse level. The concierge will escort you to a private elevator. Thank you, she said, though she couldn't say for what exactly. He rounded the vehicle and opened her door. I'll be here. You may leave your equipment. Notify the desk when you're ready. In the mirrored elevator's reflection, she caught sight of her drab clothes. She might as well have been wearing knee-high wool socks in July. Joe was right. Claire shouldn't leave the apartment without wardrobe approval. The elevator ascended in record time and did a number on her taxed stomach. At the P4 level, the doors breezed open, and the attendant informed her the suite entry was unlocked. He then rode the lift back down, leaving her alone in the hallway beneath a breathtaking chandelier to gather her thoughts. Claire took a deep breath and donned her best professional face, ready to charge into negotiation battle with powerful men and women who make powerful military decisions. For Clay, for Clay, for Clay. Inside the penthouse, her heels made a hollow knocking sound across the black marble floor. Well-lit wood panels provided the framework for original art. Stallions, cowboys with leathery hands and eyes, warriors, all masculine in subject and tone. As the hallway opened to a great room, an entire city block of windows greeted her. She wasn't alone. 3 soldiers in dress blues rose from their chairs in greeting. One in civilian clothes repositioned his wheelchair and inclined his head toward her. None of them were old enough or had enough bars on their uniform to make decisions regarding military tech. I don't understand. She surprised herself by saying it aloud. Claire, said the man still seated. He had kind eyes and an easy smile. She tried not to allow her gaze to slip lower, where his right leg should have been. Yes? This is Second Lieutenant Hernandez, Staff Sergeant Fletcher, and Army Specialist Benoit. I'm Nathan Calloway. We served with Clay. I wrote to your father. I don't understand. She hated that she repeated herself, but her mind was blank. You must have some very powerful friends, Claire. 2 of us received special permission from our higher-ups to return stateside so we could be here. You wanted the truth about what happened to Clay. We were there with him when he took his last breath. We're here to answer your questions. She had only ever spoken about her desire for clarity about Clay's death with her parents and Joe and Marcus. Only one had the clout to make this happen. Her gratitude swelled and bruised on the knowledge that he must have arranged it earlier, when she hadn't yet heard him. Her knees gave a bit. Nathan wheeled toward her, hand extended. Maybe we should sit. They moved to a leather seating area with a stellar view of Mount Hood. Fletcher brought her a glass of ice water and settled near the others. It sounds so empty, even from us, said Hernandez. But we're sorry for your loss. Clay was a great guy, always laughing, keeping morale up, fiercely loyal. I can only imagine the caliber of brother he was.
I can't believe you're all here for me. She laughed self-consciously at the absurdity of her statement and glanced around. I can't even believe I'm here. Who?
From what we understand, this is a private suite owned by Ogden Sterling, owner of the Portland Rogues, said Hernandez. We received invitations to a special recognition ceremony at next week's halftime. They're flying our families out for the occasion.
Thank you for coming.
Our pleasure, miss.
Please call me Claire.
We understand you've created wearable technology to incorporate into our Army combat uniforms, said Nathan. Clay was so proud of you. Always going on about how smart you were.
And pretty,
added Benoit.
His picture of you both at your college graduation had half the squadron wanting to propose marriage. Of course, Clay didn't like that much. Claire relished the funny stories. They told her tales about basic training, pranks that got Clay into the most trouble with their commanding officer, how he was the first to approach Afghani children and give them every provision he had, even if they hadn't eaten a decent meal in forever. Though the stories were new, they were as detailed as if she were remembering the events herself. Every nuance fit Clay's personality. As she had at the armory the night of the gala, Claire felt Clay in the room, laughing right along with the guys, watching over her. The conversation progressed to the days leading up to his last. With each story, her bones turned more leaden. Nathan, clearly the soldier who had grown closest to Clay during deployment, detailed his final hours.
Something felt off that day. You could sense it in the air. Nothing at all to do with the sandstorm. There was a disconnect between reports we'd gotten and what we saw in the city. Nothing matched up. We swept city blocks, clearing the area of possible insurgents because we got wind of civilians trapped, being held as pawns. We reached a bakery, or had what been a bakery before it was bombed to hell. We heard a kid crying in the upstairs living space. I warned Clay it could be a trap. We had orders to wait for warm bodies before we went in, but the crying grew more insistent. Clay didn't want to wait because the storm was coming. He took the lead position.
Claire rotated the ring on her finger and sank into the plush cushions, bracing herself for knowledge she was no longer certain she wanted.
By then, visibility was next to nothing. We kept in verbal contact, but sound bounced off everything, and the building was complex. You couldn't tell where one room ended and the next began. It was so badly damaged. We took different turns and became separated. I reached a third-floor landing, and the floor gave way. He backtracked and hauled me out into a protected area between buildings, then radioed for help. I thought I'd broken my back. All that time, the crying got worse. I told him not to go. Said he'd be back before the Humvee came to pick me up.
And he went anyway.
Claire knew.
She'd had a dream once she dismissed as too many late-night movies, too many newsreels, wondering when he was coming home. But as Nathan described it, she knew. It's a trap, Clay. Get out.
Oh, God, she couldn't breathe. I don't remember much after that. The IED took out most everything on the block, including my leg. They never found the remains of a child, just a voice recorder blown out the window into the street.
Claire stood and paced to the window, mostly to conceal her horror. That Clay was killed because he loved children was the most unjust reason for a human life to end. She wanted what happened to be reduced to math and science. She wanted to distill it into a formula or a line of code so she could turn his death into something tangible, to save lives, to attach meaning and purpose. But she couldn't. Clay had died because of a pure, selfless love. And no amount of data or high-tech gear could surpass the instinct of a soldier to lay down his life for another. Marcus had tried to convince her that instinct was the one thing science could never capture, on the playing field, on the battlefield, in life. She hadn't listened. They gave her a breath and space to come to terms with her brother's death. Benoit gave her a photo of Clay she had never seen. Full gear, sparkling eyes, smiling at the camera as if he was right where he wanted to be. They talked about football, how it was a lifeline to the troops, a slice of home that helped ease the horrible things they'd witnessed, and they encouraged her to keep moving forward with their tech.
"We need smart, dedicated people like you, Claire," said Fletcher. Anything that can help us do our job and get home to our families makes the sacrifice easier."
By the time she bid them goodbye and hauled herself to the lobby to call her ride, Claire was emotionally bankrupt. She tried calling Marcus from the limo to thank him. He didn't answer, and she didn't leave a message. Claire saw the guys again just before game time the next Sunday when security escorted them up to the stadium box, crowded with coaches and staff. The Rogues had home field advantage over the Seahawks, but the spread was tight. Sterling wanted real-time data fed to him, though it was anyone's guess where he was. There was confusion in the box regarding the roster. Marcus's name entered the conversation, but Clay's fellow soldiers were telling her about the amazing afternoon they'd had, courtesy of the team, and she wanted to hear every single detail. She gave them all hugs and wished them good luck at halftime. With 20 minutes until kickoff, Claire settled in front of her laptop and ran program checks. She had never paid much attention to the noise of a pregame NFL show. Her brain vaguely registered things like Hall of Fame presentations and singing and Seahawks player introductions. Mostly, she tried to figure out why her screen displayed 2 sets of feedback. Then she heard his name. Piped through the audio in the box, Marcus Kingston. 3 windows down, an open panel ushered in a deafening roar. On the field, number 11 emerged through a veil of smoke and sparklers, suited up, white home jersey, leading the remainder of his team out on the field. Claire glanced at her numbers. Heart rate spike, oxygen levels increasing. She glanced up, trying to pinpoint Eggert. She found him back a bit, crushed in the onslaught of players, not announced as starters. "Since when is Kingston starting?" she asked the play call coach.
"Vanna made the call yesterday. Worries about Eggert's composure in a playoff game. Good call. Kid attacked the pregame food cart like it was an all-you-can-eat restaurant. Found him puking his guts out about an hour ago."
Claire bit her lip to stifle a smile. Her gaze again found number 11, and her body did crazy things. Her pulse raced to match Marcus's numbers coming in. Her arteries pumped a triple shot of adrenaline through her body, injected by the crowd noise, and she felt warm everywhere. She changed Marcus's data from gray to active red and caught a close-up image of him on the 2-story stadium screen. Each of his eye blacks had the word Clay written in white ink. Claire gasped. "Clay? What the hell does that mean?" someone down the row said.
"That's a fine come Monday morning," said another.
Her heart swelled, pressing against her ribs, causing the most bittersweet pain she had ever known. She had once believed he pushed people away, put up barriers. But she had never been more wrong. Time and time again, he made himself available. To the young men enjoying football in the park, to the kids at his gym, to Clay's comrades, to charities, coaches, even a rival who needed what he had to offer. And to her. He had done nothing but move closer, while she had distanced herself. This was Clay making himself heard, giving her a swift kick, telling her to fight for it all. Her goals, her happiness, and Marcus. She had spent the week giving him his space. Keene told her Marcus was a man possessed in practice, his do-what-you've-got-to-do mentality. She had sessions with Eggert and others who had details of their gameplay they wanted to boost before heading into the playoffs, and she made travel arrangements for D.C. Sterling, who had made it his mission to reward her. Her playoffs came tomorrow. No more sidelines. But there wasn't 1 hour of the week she didn't wish she could go back to that day in the darkened hallway. Tell Marcus why Sterling had brought her there. Tell him he was right, that instincts matter. The kickoff team headed to the sidelines. Marcus's numbers came alive as the offense took the field. Chapter 12. The game clock read 3 minutes 18 seconds, second quarter. Hawks 10, Rogues 17. 3rd down and 12. Marcus relayed the play from his earpiece, then broke the huddle, his eyes immediately trained on the defense's front 7. He licked his fingertips. A warning shot fired in his gut. A blitz. They knew. His mind raced with his audible options. The stadium was so loud, the fans' collective noise pressed through his helmet and earpiece straight to his eardrum. He would just have to be louder.
"Sit."
His offensive line tucked down, a curtain of white descending simultaneously on the line of scrimmage. Marcus took a deep breath and barked off his kill word 3 times. "Ace, ace, ace!" to make sure his line heard him, then amended the play. His gaze flashed to the play clock. 5 seconds, 4 seconds. "Wide 80! 3 seconds. Hut, hut! 2 seconds. Hut!" The ball slid seamlessly into his hands. He squeezed the leather once, twice, did a 5-step drop, maybe more. His stare penetrated the near movement of his center, the face masks of the defenders, the hungry whites of their eyes trained for blood. Seconds slipped away. His line wasn't holding. He found Keene close left. Marcus reared back and fired the ball. Right on his numbers, Keene caught it. A brick wall collided with Marcus's right side. Spit and sweat rained. Sky and field reversed. His feet caught air. His passing shoulder hit earth first, and something inside snapped. Claire knew something was wrong. Marcus popped up from the field, but the camera's close-up shot couldn't hide his twisted expression. His numbers climbed and climbed, higher and higher. Blood pressure, heart rate, though it wasn't as if we had just done a quarterback sneak for 20 yards. The Rogues had a first down, but at what price? She glanced down the row. One word to the play call coach in Banna's ear could elicit a timeout, an evaluation of Marcus's shoulder status. But the Rogues prided themselves on a rocket offense, little time for the defense to adjust. Marcus was one of the best in the league at reading defenses, play calling on the fly. She knew he was trying to make the end zone before half. He wouldn't let on that his body was shutting down from pain. Instincts, Claire. Trust Marcus to do the right thing. The next play was a handoff left, 0 gain. His gear's feedback came unhinged. Eye movement sporadic, possibly attributed to lightheadedness. Crashing oxygen level from holding his breath, maybe worse, like an impact to his ribs or lungs. She knew he could see these things too. They'd gone over what the warning signals inside the helmet meant 100 times. Designed to signal him to call a timeout, communicate with his coaches. Marcus did none of that. Claire knew him well enough to know the struggle in his head. Take himself out, career over. Stay in and take another hit, career over. He wanted to go out under his terms, his way. She stood and paced away from her screen, away from the numbers. This was no longer about her data. This was about Marcus and his well-being, beyond the game. One more sack like that and his shoulder would sustain permanent, life-altering damage. Marcus had so much life to give beyond football. No game was worth that. The team had brought her here to assess information above and beyond their current capabilities. That's what she'd intended to do. But the final play of the half was underway. Touchdown, Marcus. The moment Marcus reached the locker room, trainers and doctors ambushed him. They wanted to run tests, get images. He wouldn't hear it. He accepted their ice packs, but he had a team to lead. To remind that complacency never won a game. To keep strong, because they were up against a second half, come-from-behind team. They needed his leadership. 30 minutes left of playtime, just 30 minutes. Though Marcus knew the playoffs were a marathon, not a sprint. There would be another game to win, and another after that. He didn't want to think about his shoulder's longevity. No words could touch the sensation in his injured joint. A forked branding iron, glowing orange, maybe. He told them his shoulder felt fine. Banna did his talk, then disappeared. Halftime shows during the playoffs always ran long. Some players sat and joked, some kept moving to keep muscles warm. Marcus wandered away from his spot in the locker room, a few paces away from the premature celebratory chit-chat. He needed a moment to let down, be with the pain without trying to mask it. That's when he heard a commotion by the defensive players' lockers. At first he thought it was a scuffle, then he heard a familiar voice. Her voice. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Even in a noisy locker room, her question came audible loud. "Ho, ho, ho!" Keene snagged her as she stormed past him. "Hold it there, Claire Bear!" She kicked free of Keene's hold and shoved players aside, rather fruitlessly. A fiery little dark-haired package in a sea of massive white shoulder pads. When she reached Marcus, she gripped his jersey number and shoved him back a few steps. And what had been the chaos of an NFL locker room at halftime became a rapt audience. Somewhere between the intensity of an MMA weigh-in and the silence of a golf tournament, final putt. What are you going to do? Swell up like the blimp out there and play a crappy second half? Not help your team? Tell them, Marcus. Tell them, or I will. He cringed. All the heat trapped inside his physically taxed body went to his extremities. His head pounded. His hands gripped the front collar of his pads, hard. Not here, Claire. Not now. The words snaked through his clenched teeth. That day in the film room? The day we kissed? The room went from rapt audience to rowdy gentlemen's club, complete with catcalls, whistles, and a crescendo of woohoos, as irritating as the Jets chant at kickoff. Marcus's cheeks flamed until they felt like preseason Miami, August, full gear. Marcus grabbed her hand and tugged her out into a side hallway. A handful of faces peered around the corner, and a cacophony of shushing filled the locker room. Claire was unfazed. You said you learned a long time ago to let people come to you, to challenge you, to be honest. I won't stand by and let you do this. I love you, Marcus. You matter. Not just in this game, but in life. You've achieved so much greatness on the field, but if you go out there like this, you're risking your greatness at everything that comes after. You matter. And if you can't see that, then you aren't the person I thought you were. He breathed fire, but couldn't move or speak. He couldn't do anything but stare into her eyes. Colorless now, but no less beautiful. And he was back in the film room, and the practice field, and the hive, and the greenhouse, and a dozen other places where she had reminded him of who he was when he took off the helmet and pads. She could see it. He just wished he could. Someone called time. Players donned their helmets. The locker room thinned. He wanted nothing more than to draw her close, drink in her scent like a balm, and feel her whispers brush his lips. But eclipsing it all was his hurt, his shoulder, his head, his heart. Throat muscles clenched, threatening to choke out his last effort to prevent any further pain. Marcus backed away.
Go back to your numbers, Claire.
He jogged through the locker room, scooped up his helmet, and caught up to the stragglers of his team, trying desperately to forget the hurt that surpassed them all. The hurt in the eyes of the woman he loved. The Seahawks' offense went 3 and out. As pleased as Marcus was that his team's defense was unmatched, their toughness meant more offensive clock time. His shoulder had transitioned to a state of numbness, not unlike his focus.
Woman like that gets under your skin, we all screwed.
He jogged onto the field. Much of his gift was memory, muscle and otherwise. He leaned heavily on rote memory now, because all he could think about was the last time he disappointed Saul. The day of his injury last season. Saul would have wanted him in the Super Bowl. What Marcus believed he had to do was to repay him for all he had done, sacrificed, loved. 4th and goal, scrimmage at the goal line. Marcus would rely on no one else to make Saul proud. He dove over the pile. His shoulder paid the price. Saul had witnessed his selfishness. 3 other options on the field, guys open. Marcus didn't get a chance to apologize, to explain. Saul had died the next day. This may have been the beginning of a drive, first down, but it felt the same. At the huddle, he relayed the play. The field tilted slightly. Sweat drizzled from the tip of his nose to his lips. He didn't remember his core temperature so high in the first half. Since his first game back from an injured reserve, Claire had transitioned him from temporary wires to wireless sensors. He wished he had the wires up to rip free. Claire would be freaking.
You don't look so good.
Keen's stare pinched hard behind his face mask, eyes directly on Marcus.
You okay, man?
No, he was far from okay. But he covered it with a joke.
I will be if you catch this.
The journey to the place behind his center felt out of body. Half his mind readied for the play, no audible necessary. The other half flashed images like a highlight reel on fast forward. The paper sack under the fire escape. Darius, touch football with Claire in the park. Firing a gun and watching a body fall. Claire beside him and beneath him, reminding him of his worth. And Saul speaking to him as if he were there.
A man's greatness can't be found between the uprights. Set!
The play clock wound down. 5 seconds. Marcus squeezed his eyes closed. The pain in his shoulder crippled.
The pain of failing his team, his mentor, himself, again, was greater. He backed away from the snap and signaled a timeout. Whistles rent the air. The offensive line straightened, their helmets tracking to each other, to him, to the sideline. In his ear, Coach Banna said, "Jesus, King, what the hell?" Marcus ripped off his helmet and ran straight for the sidelines, straight for Eggert, who was warming the bench with a Gatorade cup in his hand. He grabbed the kid's jersey with his left hand and hauled him down the sidelines and into the tunnel to the locker room. No audience, no cameras, just Marcus and Colin. And 70,000 fans who had gone funeral quiet. "The fuck you doing?" Colin wrestled out of Marcus's grip. "You're going in." "What?" His voice dragged and cracked on the word, a note of complete disbelief. "Right now, rest of the game. You have what it takes. I've seen it. Team's in good hands." "I don't get it." "Maybe not, but you will. Keep the team first priority. Help those who come after." "What if I blow it?" "You won't." Marcus extended his hand. Colin shook his head like he was shedding disbelief. His lips pressed into a tight line. Moisture clouded his eyes. He accepted Marcus's hand and pulled him into a hug. "I learned from the best, man." Marcus smiled. Coach Banna eclipsed the light in the tunnel's opening. "I hate to break up this little love fest, but we have a game to win." "Eggert's your man, Coach. That second quarter hit took me out. I'm headed in for imaging." Marcus had never once told a coach how it was going to be. When you eat and sleep and breathe football, there isn't much room to think about anything else. In his decision, Marcus found room for other things. His health, his legacy beyond the game. And maybe, just maybe, the love of a woman with the mad skills of a defensive tackle and the courage to storm into an NFL locker room and admit she had put him ahead of her numbers. Chapter 13. With 2 minutes left in regulation time, Rogues up by 18, Marcus pulled a disappearing act. Dressed in the athletic pants and team shirt he had donned after the doc wrapped his shoulder, he grabbed a security guard and took staff corridors to a private elevator that accessed the floor with the stadium suites. No doubt he would run into Press, who filled the closest of the boxes, but he didn't care. He had to get to Claire. Marcus charged into the room. Everywhere, coaches and staff surrendered their headsets and seats and shook hands, all smiles. Members of the press crowded after him, a few lugging network cameras on their shoulders. He scanned the room. Claire's friend Joe stood in her place, packing electronic equipment. "Where's Claire?" Joe's mouth fell open. She stammered a bit, her eyes shifting to the coaches and the ambushing press. She's gone." Marcus's body felt sacked all over again. Brick wall. This time his heart took the brunt. "What do you mean, gone?" "She left to catch a flight to D.C. Said she wasn't always so great with first chances, but she intended to make something of her second." "How long ago did she leave?" Joe's mouth caved into a frown. "Plane left 10 minutes ago." A blonde reporter with too much makeup crowded his face with a microphone. "Marcus, can you tell us what was behind the decision to come out early in the—" The roar of the crowd drowned out the remnants of her question. Game over. Claire pitched her tech to a starchy room of 9 men and 1 woman. Collectively, they wore enough colored bars on their brass-buttoned dress jackets to rival a greenhouse full of orchids. They represented all 5 branches of service. Her final shot, her ultimate goal. She began her presentation at the opening of a horseshoe-shaped conference desk that filled a yawning room in the Pentagon's east side. But she didn't stay there. She wanted the video Joe had painstakingly put together to take center stage. The idea had been Joe's. She reminded Claire that people bought into technology with their hearts, not with their minds. Tech was simply the vehicle to connect people and stories and struggles and triumphs. Over tears and hugs the night Claire returned from meeting Clay's army buddies, she convinced Claire that heart was where her first pitch failed. That same night, while Claire curled beneath the covers and said goodbye to Clay, Joe met up with Fletcher, Benoit, Hernandez, and Calloway to shoot video, to help sell Claire's mission. Not of tech, but of life.
Claire was thankful she had been in the privacy of her hotel room the first time she watched it. Nathan narrated, as if he were Clay, speaking about his family, his love of country, reading from letters Claire's team back in California had found under her bed. He narrated about his service, his brotherhood in the United States Army, and the events of the day he died. As Clay, he spoke about how things might have been different had they all been wearing Claire's tech. His warm, accessible voice and soft strains of orchestral music ensured there wasn't a dry eye left in the sterile, cavernous space. They offered her a contract on a trial basis to outfit a small contingent of special forces they agreed would most benefit from her wearable tech. Meetings over the next few months would ensure she designed the hardware and software to their precise needs. After handshakes and heartfelt condolences, Claire packed up her laptop, surveyed the empty room, and grinned. No more sidelines. Her smile, tempered by thoughts of all she had lost to reach her goal, faded. Someday, when enough time had passed for a shot at forgiveness, she might even tell Marcus the end result of all those sessions, some great code, a little confidence, and enough courage to surpass grief. The soldier at the door escorted her from the building. She walked out into the blinding sun, thinking of the future. Portland had grown on her. Trees and rain and cloudy days seemed to refresh her in a way California never had. She fished in her bag for her sunglasses and rental keys. When she looked up again, her gaze landed on a familiar face, and her heart skipped a beat. Marcus laughed aloud as he signed a piece of paper. Beside him, a security guard had that look, totally enamored. Dressed in a suit with pops of magenta at his tie and pocket square, the quarterback had never looked sexier. Well, Claire failed to suppress her grin. Her forward progress stopped on weakened legs. She had trouble assimilating Marcus, here, now. The security guard motioned toward her. Marcus repositioned the familiar lenses on his nose and glanced up. His hand stalled on the autograph. It took him a moment to recover. He quickly scrawled off the remainder of his signature, gave the guy a hearty, bro-style handshake, and walked toward her like he had just won the biggest game of his life. "You come all this way to convert Redskins fans?" Marcus's hearty chuckle filled her. "There's only one fan I care to convert." "And who might that be?" He leaned down and captured her lips. His kiss had the vulnerability of an apology and the sincerity of a vow. She never wanted it to end. "Does this mean I'm forgiven?" "For telling my boys we got busy in the film room? I'm pretty sure that makes me a legend." Claire dissolved into laughter, warmed from the inside. Nothing at all to do with the sun. "Lucky for you, I have data to back up that claim." He straightened the knot of his tie, his mouth tugged into a sly, irresistible grin. Her smile sobered a bit. Marcus being here was nice, considerate. Something a friend would do. She needed to hear him say this was more. "Why did you come?" "Biggest play of your life? I wouldn't miss it." "And all the plays after that?" Marcus removed his glasses and slid them into his pocket. His gorgeous blue gaze locked onto hers. "I love you, Claire. For the first time ever, I feel worthy of this feeling. Of you. I want you on my team. Not just now, but for life." He pulled a photo from his pocket. The group picture taken the day they played football in the park, trimmed to a wallet size around Claire. He held her image, side by side, with the black and white photo he had carried all these years. "You're my Irma." Her eyes misted. Her feet felt stuck in concrete, but her heart lost gravity. How could an honor so weighty make her feel so light? "You'll need a new photo," she laughed through her tears. "You have a little bit of Oliver in there." "He can be my Irma, too. Dude had some serious game." He commandeered her heavy tech bag and rested the strap on his healthy shoulder, then linked his hand in hers and led her to a sleek black car with a waiting driver. "I want to hear all about your meeting." Maybe Joe's next project should be a Sir Galahad after all. He was certainly endowed with
All sorts of knightly characteristics. Claire fought valiantly to hide her grin, and failed. He smiled, his eyes shifty, self-conscious. What? Nothing, just thinking I need to get yarn. Lots of extra yarn. Marcus shook his head. Someday you're gonna have to let me in on that joke. Claire couldn't think of a better day than today. Game on.
Wired. The Solomon Brothers Series, Book 1. Written by Leslie North. Narrated by Rebecca Roberts. Copyright 2016 by Relay Publishing. Production copyright 2017 by Relay Publishing.